The most terrifying prison is not the house. It is the inheritance hidden inside her name. Arya believes she is returning to a place of grief, a decaying home left behind by a distant mother. But what she actually inherits is not property. It is a system of violence disguised as family legacy. Sebastian does not merely enter the story as a dangerous man. He enters as proof that her mother's silence was never innocence. In this world, love, protection, control, and possession blur into one brutal truth. She was not raised outside the Empire. She was raised to forget it.
Heals. So this is how a world unravels. Not with a bang, but with the silent burning shock of ice-cold water in the lungs. We open on a final scene, a psychologist named Arya Ellis, age 25, descending into the blackness of the Mediterranean. She was, Heals, by every measure, a creature of logic, a planner from Detroit whose life was a carefully constructed edifice. This same meticulousness brought her to Scario, Italy, with a clear objective: liquidate a maternal inheritance, fund a future. Heals. The plan was flawless, but a plan cannot account for a variable like Sebastian Biano, heir to a Sicilian crime syndicate. 2 weeks after his collision with her life, as she sinks into the abyss, the architecture of her logic has utterly collapsed. Heals. All that remained was the psychic imprint of Sebastian Biano's eyes, the ghost of his touch, and the singular resonant question, is he safe? It was a profound deviation from her nature. For the first time, Heals, she had allowed intuition to overpower intellect. As the darkness claimed her, her final thoughts were not of her own end, but of the staggering, terrible truth of her journey. We rewind. Picture Arya arriving in Scario, Heals, shouldering a psychological weight far heavier than her luggage. The journey, a disorienting blur. And then the house. Perched above the sea, it was a monument to decay. Faded shutters, a fractured roof, and a path being slowly reclaimed by nature. Heals. She sweeps a strand of auburn hair from her brow, a futile gesture to conceal the chasm between expectation and reality. The estate agent, Rico Alfonsi, ruminates. Signora Venti, sell it as is. You might see 600,000 euros. Venti, Heals. A name from a life before hers. I'm Arya Ellis, she corrects, a quiet assertion of her own identity. Ah, scusi, Signora Ellis. He raises a finger. But an alternative, rent it for 2 months. Heals. Invest that capital into its restoration. Then its value could ascend to 2 million, perhaps more. The calculus is brutal but simple. 2 months of rent would fund the repairs, allowing her to inhabit the guest house, oversee the project, Heals, and transform this liability into the foundation for her practice. This, she reasons, is a logical path forward. Heals. The motel room is sterile, smelling of bleach. On her laptop screen, her friend Jennifer's face is a portrait of skepticism. My plan is to rent it out, Jen. Jennifer's eyebrows telegraph her disbelief. Rent it? Arya, you have no capital for repairs. Heals. Arya leans toward the camera, attempting to project confidence. I know, but a 2-month tenancy provides the necessary cash flow. I'll occupy the guest house, then I sell. Jennifer's expression softens into one of concern. What about your clients? Heals. A muscle tightens in Arya's jaw. My professional relationship with Dr. Reynolds is over. I can conduct my sessions remotely. Jennifer lowers her voice, her image leaning in. Heals. Are you certain you're safe? You're completely isolated there. Arya's gaze drifts to the street below. It's a charming town. It's possible I even have family nearby. Jennifer's face remains unconvinced. In truth, so is Arya. Heals. The phone rings at 7:47 in the morning, a violent intrusion into a restless sleep. Her heart thuds against her ribs. Signora Ellis, come quickly. I have found a tenant for you. For 2 months. Action eclipses thought. Heals. She throws on a dress, slips into sandals, and grabs her keys, her pulse a frantic rhythm against the cobblestone streets. Yesterday, she was too exhausted to truly register her inheritance. Heals. Today, she is about to surrender its keys to an unknown entity. The iron gate stands ajar, an invitation into the overgrown garden where the stone path is all but lost. Moving with haste, her foot snags on an unseen obstacle. Her world tilts. Heals. A sickening lurch, time dilating as the ground rushes to meet her. But before impact, powerful arms encircle her waist, arresting her descent. Her system shorts out. A sharp gasp, her hands bracing against a solid form. Heals. A profound warmth radiates through the fine fabric of his shirt. His heartbeat, a steady, measured rhythm beneath her palms, a stark contrast to the frantic flutter in her own throat. A current ignites at his touch. Heals. Her eyes trace a path downward, polished leather shoes, expensive, and tailored linen trousers held by a gold buckle. Her gaze ascends, and then impact. His eyes, a pale, unreadable green, capture hers. In that suspended moment, feels. An entire silent dialogue unfolds. His gaze assesses her face, her hazel eyes, the subtle catch in her breath. He is meticulously groomed, from his trim beard to his styled hair. A slow, unfamiliar heat builds within her. Feels. Her skin tingles where his hands remain. At 5'5", she is acutely aware of her own smallness and of the effortless strength that just saved her. He murmurs in Italian, his voice smooth and low. No Italiano, she manages. Feels her voice a fragile whisper. Feels. A wave of heat climbs her neck. A daughter of an Italian mother, yet a stranger to the language. His expression shifts, a subtle flicker of something like amusement. American. The word is flawless, devoid of any accent. She steps back, craving space, air. Feels. His focus breaks from hers, travels to the house, and then snaps back. The house? Are you the proprietor? Her voice returns as she smooths her wrinkled dress. Yes, I am. Rico appears, panting from the exertion. Signora Ellis. Feels. I see you have met my client. The man's eyes drift from Rico to Arya, his appraisal slow and deliberate. I understand you intend to occupy the guest house. Feels. If I am to rent this property, I will not tolerate another resident on the grounds. The audacity is stunning. Her posture stiffens. She opens her mouth to object, but movement from the house freezes the words in her throat. Two men emerge. Feels. They are immense, built with the solidity of professional athletes, their musculature straining against the confines of their suits. Her entire nervous system screams a warning. Her pulse accelerates. A single word crystallizes in her mind. Mafia. Here? Feels. In Italy, she forces her gaze back to his. I have a policy against renting to individuals without families. A ghost of a smile touches his lips, as if he finds her attempt to impose order amusing. What leads you to believe I am without family? Feels. He gestures toward the two giants. They are my family. She musters a smile of her own. Feels. I believe you understood my meaning perfectly. Rico moves closer, his voice a frantic whisper. Signora Ellis, Signor Biano is quite taken with the house. 2 months. He is a very serious man. He takes a shallow breath. Feels. And his offer is 80,000 euros. The number lands with the force of a physical blow. 80,000 euros. For 2 months, she studies him then. The cold, analytical eyes, the arrogant posture, the gold ring, the two enforcers. The suit? Feels. Clearly bespoke. The most magnetic man she has ever seen. And in that moment, she despises him. Her response is sharp, final. No, the offer is not accepted. Sebastian Biano, who had been looking out at the sea, turns his head slowly. His eyes find hers. Feels. He raises a single eyebrow. So, he says, his voice quiet. You're not accepting. Rico interjects, his voice low. Feels. Signora Ellis, a word in private, please. Rico pulls her aside, his speech a torrent of anxiety. Listen, a typical family will not pay 80,000 euros for 2 months in a deteriorating villa. I can arrange a room for you, Feels. Or, we could propose an immediate sale. He might be persuaded to pay 600,000. Arya's jaw is set. No, I will not sell for that price. She glances at the three men, now in quiet conference. Feels. Sebastian Biano's attention is fixed on a small stone dock extending into the water. His bodyguard, Vince, speaks. Boss, we could inspect other properties. Feels. This one requires significant work.
Sebastian's mains on the dock.
No, Vince, this is the one. It is a location no one would consider. A concealed cove, he pauses. And that stone dock, it could prove a strategic asset. Furthermore, Feels, the Venti house. This place holds a history you do not yet understand. His eyes then shift, landing on Arya as she marches back toward them. A small smirk forms on his lips. Besides, I like her. Arya halts before him, chin lifted. I am sorry, Feels, but your offer is unacceptable. Sebastian's expression is unmoved. 200,000 euros for 2 months, and I will see to the renovation of the interior myself. Arya's breath catches. 200,000, Feels. What possible motive could justify such a figure? Sebastian's gaze travels down her body and back up, a mocking smile playing on his lips. Feels. I want this house, and I have a policy of always getting what I want. Arya feels her throat constrict. That sum of money, it could transform the property, enabling a sale price closer to 3 million. But she meets his gaze, refusing to be dominated. Feels. I am staying in the guest house. Sebastian merely inclines his head. Fine. It is sufficiently removed. I will move in today. The realtor's face is a mask of pure relief, a wide grin stretching across it. Excellent, Feels. Let us proceed to the office to sign the contracts. There they sit beside one another, executing the lease agreement. As Arya reviews the documents, she notes Sebastian's date of birth. 37. A native of Sicily. She glances over, Heels, only to find him reading her own file with equal curiosity. Heels. Her gaze broke first, instantly. His did not. When she risked a glance back, his stare was unwavering, an eyebrow arched above a smirk that oozed a smug self-assurance. Arya's jaw tightened as she forced her eyes back to the documents. Heels. The sheer audacity of the man was a fire in her gut, a testament to his immediate and unsettling effect on her. Later, seeking refuge in the town, Arya walked. Scario was no postcard. It possessed an authentic grit, Heels, a soul etched into its turquoise waters and aging facades. At the town hall, she pursued the name Venti, her mother's name. The list was short, but a single family surfaced, an address jotted down for a future pilgrimage. That afternoon, Heels. Returning to the property, she was met with a jarring scene. From the gate, she counted at least 7, maybe 8 men, a swarm of activity engulfing both houses. The velocity of the change sent a tremor of shock through her. Heels. So he's a man of his word, she conceded internally, an insufferably arrogant man, but one who honors a deal. Inside the guest house, however, a different reality was unfolding. Sebastian stood with only 2 of his crew, Vince and Luigi. Cameras there, Heels. Vince, he commanded. On the stone dock, a mechanism to secure a boat. I want every exterior angle covered. We prepare for any incursion, no matter how insignificant. Luigi shifted his weight, a flicker of unease crossing his face. Boss, Heels. The Lamberts have no idea you exist. It will be weeks, minimum, before they could find this place. Sebastian's tone became glacial. I don't operate on chance, Luigi. Soon we will possess the strength to erase them in Sicily, but until then, Heels, we prepare for everything. Vince cleared his throat. Heels. What's the play with the girl, boss? She's a variable. You didn't know she would be here, correct? A slow, predatory smile formed on Sebastian's face. For now, she is a non-factor, the smirk returned. In fact, her presence could be an asset. Good cover. Heels. She lends a certain domestic flavor to the tableau. He looked away, his mind already navigating future possibilities. I have plans for her. Should she become a liability, she will be managed. The next day, Arya arrived at the guest house. Heels. Suitcase in tow, the interior was spotless, a small kitchen, a bedroom with a door opening to the sea, stone steps leading to a dilapidated dock and a bathroom. 2 months in this space, she mused, letting her bag fall to the floor. Heels. Through the sea-facing door, she noticed 2 men on the dock below, methodically planting vibrant flowers along the walkway. Arya stepped outside immediately. What is this? One of them straightened up. The boss's orders. To make it look beautiful, Heels. She could only stare, baffled by the question of who exactly he was performing for. Arya attempted to acclimate to the small house, her life condensed into a single suitcase and a laptop. The first night was unsettling. Heels. The silence so profound it felt like a presence. From her window, the main stone house was a dark mass punctuated by a few dim lights. They were in there. Vince, Luigi, Sebastian. The thought offered no comfort, only a chilling ambiguity. Heels. Was their proximity a shield or a target? She was thousands of miles from all she knew, a tenant in her own legacy, renting to a man who was the human embodiment of danger. Heels. A masterstroke of judgment. Hardly. Her mind was a storm of second-guessing as she drifted into sleep. Morning light served as her alarm. Arya walked to the water's edge, the view of the Mediterranean staggering in its eternal pale blue expanse. Heels. Her mother grew up on this very land before marrying and fleeing to America. Arya tried to conjure an image of her as a girl, bare feet on these stones. But her mother had walled off Scario, Heels, never uttering a word about this place or the reasons she ran and never returned. Arya's gaze drifted upward to the main house, and there he was. On a second-floor balcony stood Sebastian, shirtless, Heels, his chest slick with sweat as he unleashed a controlled fury on a heavy bag. Heels. His physique was a study in lethal efficiency, all hard angles and raw power, a machine engineered for violence. As if sensing her observation, Sebastian abruptly stopped and his eyes found hers. He offered a lazy, impossibly confident wave. Heels. A slow heat crept up Arya's neck as she tore her gaze away. Completely not my type, she murmured to the sea. The words a flimsy shield against an undeniable truth. Stay away from him. A few days passed into a fragile routine. Heels. Online therapy sessions in the morning, sunbathing in the afternoon, occasional walks into the village. She wasn't cultivating friendships, nor did she want to. The solitude was a balm. One afternoon, in the middle of a video session, Heels, a deafening noise erupted from the dock, a percussive symphony of banging and drilling. She ended the call and went to investigate the source of the chaos. Heels. 2 men were installing a massive metal apparatus onto the stone dock. Arya's heart began to pound. Excuse me, the noise is frankly absurd. What is that thing? Are you docking a boat here? Feels. Because I have absolutely no desire to have a boat moored in front of my house. Luigi offered a dismissive glance, his expression impassive. Signorina, what the boss requires, we provide. It is in your best interest to refrain from asking questions. Feels. Hours later, Arya noted a profound silence had fallen over the main house. The crew's vehicles were gone. The property appeared deserted. She found herself drawn to the gate, her mind a battleground of justification. Feels. It was still her mother's home, her inheritance. What real harm could a brief look inside possibly cause? She walked the path and pushed open the heavy front door. Feels. Sebastian had emptied the house, but had replaced almost nothing. The vast space felt hollow, as if holding its breath in anticipation. At the top of the sweeping staircase, she saw it. A portrait. It was her mother's family. Feels. The recognition was instantaneous. In the center, a young girl with dark hair and hazel eyes. Her mother. Younger than any photo Arya had ever seen, perhaps 15, surrounded by the faces of her kin. Sebastian hadn't discarded it. Feels. Arya took a few steps up the staircase for a closer view. It was then she heard the footsteps. A cold dread plunged through her. She spun around. Sebastian was at the top of the landing, entirely nude. Feels. Water from his wet hair tracing slow paths down his neck. Feels. In the dim light, his skin possessed a sculptural quality, each muscle defined as if chiseled from marble. Her gaze was involuntarily drawn to a single bead of water, tracing a path down his abdomen before she could wrench her eyes away. Feels. A wave of heat rising to her face. The very air seemed to evacuate her lungs. She was paralyzed, by sight, by stillness, by a breath she could not take. He made no move to cover himself, simply observing her observation. A phantom smile touched his lips. Feels. A look of profound awareness of the effect he was having. Then, with deliberate slowness, he secured a towel around his waist, the knot tied with an air of calculated indifference. She turned away abruptly, her face ablaze. Feels. I just thought. Sebastian, meanwhile, moved with an unhurried grace, as if this intrusion were the most natural thing in the world. Feels. Why are you in my house? The voice was a shard of ice. Arya kept her back to him.
This is my house.
She heard the floorboards creak behind her before his hand closed around her wrist, not with violence, but with an undeniable, absolute finality. Feels. So long as I am paying for it, it is mine. The words ignited a fire of humiliation in Arya's cheeks. Her body went rigid as she tried to pull away from his grip. He was immovable. Let go of me. Sebastian's voice dropped, becoming a low murmur. Feels. If you are going to wander into my home uninvited, he said, then you are going to make me coffee. We are, for all intents and purposes, neighbors. We may as well become acquainted. No, we don't. But his hold on her remained. He simply raised an eyebrow. Feels. A silent challenge. A cold knot of apprehension began to twist in her stomach. This man was a complete unknown. Feels. She had no framework for what he might be capable of. Sebastian released her. Arya didn't hesitate. She fled down the stairs and out through the door, nearly breaking into a run on the path back to the guest house. What were you thinking? Feels. Walking in there, she slammed the door, her heart hammering against her ribs. Tossing her hair back, she quickly changed her clothes. The imperative was clear. She had to leave. Find a place of safety. A place with people. Feels. She grabbed her bag and pulled the door open again. Sebastian was standing there. He wore a white linen shirt and camel-colored trousers, his hair still damp and disheveled. He smelled of the ocean, a clean, saline scent underscored by something deeper. Feels. More complex. Were you leaving without making me that coffee? He stepped over the threshold before she could form a response. Feels. Arya took 3 involuntary steps back. A primal fight-or-flight response had seized her body long before her conscious mind could process the situation. Sebastian's eyes surveyed the small room with an analytical curiosity. Small but charming. Feels. He leaned closer, his gaze tracing the line of her neck to her collarbone. It smells pleasant in here as well. Arya's pulse throbbed in her throat. He was too close, his confidence too absolute, his presence too overwhelming. Feels. She hated his handsome features. She hated that her own physiology was betraying her, responding to him even as every rational instinct screamed danger. Sebastian moved to her kitchen counter and grimaced. Wait, is this supposed to be a coffee maker? Feels. His horror seemed genuine. You Americans, how can you drink this filth? Don't tell me you do not own a mocha pot. My coffee is perfectly fine. Feels. He produced a phone and was already dialing. Luigi, bring me a mocha pot and some fresh espresso, immediately. His eyes never left Arya. She rolled hers in defiance. I was actually just leaving. Feels. Sebastian pocketed his phone and began to roll up his sleeves. Before Arya could even contemplate stopping him, he had lifted the small, two-person table from her kitchen and carried it outside onto the stone dock. He followed with the chairs, heels. Then he sat, leaning back and turning his face toward the sun. Baffled, Arya followed him out, stopping beside the table. When Sebastian looked at her again, the sun illuminated his eyes. Green, a startling, impossible green, heels like sea glass held up to the light. She could only stare, utterly captivated. Heels. They were the most extraordinary eyes she had ever witnessed. Luigi materialized at the dock's edge, carrying a mocha pot and two small cups. He placed them on the table without a word and vanished just as silently, his footsteps fading on the stone path. Heels. Sebastian took the pot, pouring the dark, viscous espresso into each cup. The rich aroma filled the air, far more potent than anything from her machine. He slid one of the cups across the table toward her. Arya sat, the chair scraping on the stone. Heels. She wrapped her hands around the small cup, absorbing its warmth. "So, why are you two staying here for 2 months?" Sebastian's smile was a slow, deliberate thing. It was dark, perilous. Vacation. The word hung in the air, heels, feeling like a complete fabrication. Heels. Arya clutched the small cup as if it were a shield. "Where are you from?" "Rome." Sebastian leaned back, the picture of relaxation, but his eyes were sharp, probing. He then leaned forward, his focus entirely on her. "Why are you so far from home, Bella?" Heels. Arya's mind flashed to the rental documents. They had listed Sicily. Why was he lying about Rome? Her grip on the porcelain tightened. "This was my mother's house. She left it to me. I came to prepare it for sale. I thought I would stay for the summer." Heels. Sebastian raised his own cup, his gaze locked with hers. "So the painting upstairs, that is your family, the Ventus." Heels. A hot flush crept up her neck. "How do you know that?" He took a slow, methodical sip from his cup before setting it down, his eyes fixed on some distant point on the water. "I made it my business to know who owned this house." With those words, Heels, a chilling sensation flooded her body. He had investigated her, her family, while she remained entirely ignorant of him. Sebastian finished his espresso, the cup meeting the saucer with a soft, definitive click. He looked at her then, Heels, a deep and penetrating gaze, and for a moment something in the green of his eyes seemed to fracture. "That's coffee, Arya," her name, the first time he had spoken it. The way the vowels elongated, Heels, softened by his Italian accent, it stirred something within her that she refused to acknowledge. A treacherous pulse began to beat beneath her skin. Heels. She hated that she liked the sound of it. Sebastian rose, his chair scraping backward. A smile touched his lips but failed to reach his eyes. They remained hard, unreadable. "Do not enter my house again, Bella." Heels. As he walked a few paces toward the guest house, the voice that had been trapped in her throat finally broke free. The name was an error, an instinctive slip she could not retract. Sebastian. With that single word, Heels, the formal barrier she had constructed between them dissolved into nothing. She had used his given name without thinking. He paused, turning his head just enough to look back at her, and his entire demeanor shifted. Heels. It was a mixture of surprise and something approaching warmth. The slight curve returned to his lips as she gestured vaguely toward the water. Heels. "I don't want a boat moored in front of my guest house." Sebastian's smile deepened into something private, something knowing. Then he was gone, leaving her with an empty espresso cup and the lingering scent of the sea. Later that afternoon, Heels, Arya found herself at the town hall. The clerk behind the counter looked up as she approached, his expression impassive. She leaned on the counter, aiming for a casual tone she did not feel. Heels. "I'm trying to find information on a family with the surname Venti." The clerk's eyes narrowed. "Why do you ask?" She held his gaze, refusing to be intimidated. "Because I am a Venti." The man immediately straightened and went to an office in the back. Heels. She saw him lean over, murmuring to another man. The second man, older with glasses, leaned forward to look directly at Arya. Heels. He gave a sharp, single nod. The clerk returned, wrote something on a piece of paper, and pushed it across the counter. An address. There is only one family left. Arya took the paper, her hand trembling slightly. Just one. Heels. That was all that remained of them. The house was small and painted a pale yellow, its shutters weathered by years of sun and sea salt. Arya knocked. The door opened to reveal a young woman, perhaps a few years older than herself, with long heels, wavy hair and kind brown eyes. A woman of effortless beauty. "Hi, she began, her words failing her. "I think we might be distant cousins. I am Laura Venti's daughter." The woman's eyes widened, her lips parting in astonishment. "Oh," Heels. Venti. Heels. She was my great-uncle's daughter, the one who owned the stone house on the water. Without hesitation, the woman stepped forward and drew Arya into a surprisingly warm embrace. I'm Margarita. 15 minutes later, Heels, they were seated in Margarita's garden, small glasses of limoncello between them. Margarita leaned in, her eyes bright with excitement. I have an American cousin who is a psychologist. This is wonderful. I must show you everything. This weekend, Heels, we will go out. You are here for 2 months, yes? We are going to make them count. Arya felt a genuine smile form on her lips. Walking home afterward, she allowed herself to hope that this summer, guided by this vibrant, cheerful woman, Heels might turn out to be good after all. Heels. But when Arya returned to the guest house, she saw them, immediately. Small black cameras affixed to the corners of the main house, aimed at the garden, at the dock, at her. A constricting pressure built in her chest. She took out her phone, Heels, stared at the screen for a long moment, then dialed. The man renting my house, who is he exactly? Pro's voice was cautious on the line. A wealthy businessman, why? Her eyes snapped back to the cameras. What kind of business? I do not know, Signora. Heels. He paid in cash. That is all I was told. Arya ended the call. She stepped back outside, her gaze shifting from the beautiful flowers lining the path to the cold, black lenses staring down from the main house. Heels. She held his image in her mind, a fixed and troubling portrait. Who are you, Sebastian Bianco? The question was a whisper of the surveillance. Why this house? Far below, a boat cut a clean line through the water toward the dock, Heels, its engine a low thrum. Sebastian stood at the bow, his focus absolute, scanning the cliffs. Tell my cousin I have arrived, he commanded, his voice slicing through the motor's growl. Vince at the helm cast a sideways glance. Are you certain, boss? Heels. What if Diego is the leak? A slow, cold smile stretched across Sebastian's lips. I'm counting on it. Vince's knuckles whitened on the wheel. And if the Lamberts appear? Sebastian's gaze remained fixed on the stone house perched on the shore. Heels. Then we will be prepared for them. Bled across the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Arya had prepared a simple meal pasta and opened a bottle of wine. She sat at the small table Sebastian had left near the dock, Heels, bare feet on the cool stone, a wine glass in hand. Before her the sea was an immense and silent expanse. For the first time since her arrival, a fragile sense of peace began to settle within her. And then a low drone fractured the quiet. A small boat, Heels, a dark silhouette against the fading light, was moving with purpose directly toward her dock, growing larger with each passing second. A white-hot rage ignited in her chest. Heels. I told him no boat at this dock. The vessel coasted to a stop, bobbing gently in the water. Vince cut the engine. Sebastian disembarked first, his movements fluid and assured, as if his ownership of the land and sea were an indisputable fact. Heels. While technically true for the next 2 months, it did not grant him license to disregard her wishes. Arya shot to her feet, the chair scraping loudly against the stone. She marched to the dock's edge, arms crossed in a tight, protective posture. Heels. He approached with that same easy, confident gait, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled. He looked less like a tenant in a sleepy town and more like a man stepping off a yacht in Monaco. Heels. I said I didn't want a boat at my guest house. The words emerged sharper than she had intended. Sebastian offered no reply. He simply moved past her, approached her small table, and lifted her glass of wine. Raising it, he took a long, deliberate sip. Heels, his eyes locked on hers. He set the glass down and picked up the bottle, turning it to examine the label with a faint, knowing smirk. Someone needs to educate you on wine, Arya. His tone was light, almost playful. This is far too astringent. Heels. You need something with more fruit. A hint of smoke, perhaps. Heat rushed to her face. Are you actively choosing to ignore me? Sebastian placed the bottle down and simply looked at her, his gaze a slow, methodical inventory of her fury. Heels. I'll take you out on the boat sometime. There are some beautiful coves to see. And with that, he turned and walked toward the guesthouse door, as if the entire exchange were concluded. Arya's nails dug into her palms, the pressure a sharp point of pain. Heels. You arrogant, self-absorbed. But he was already inside, Vince following a step behind. She was left standing alone, the blood pounding in her ears, her hands trembling with a desire to shatter something. Narcissist. Heels. The clinical term landed with perfect clarity. A smug, insufferable narcissist who treats the world as his personal domain. Inside the main house, Sebastian ascended the stairs to the second floor. Heels. He proceeded down the hall to the last door on the right, the room he had claimed from his first day. The lock clicked, sealing him inside his sanctuary. The space was austere, purely functional. A desk, a chair, heels. But the walls were a mosaic of digital light, 6 screens. Each displayed a live feed from a different camera: the garden, the dock, the main gate, the driveway, and the guest house. Sebastian pulled out the chair and sat, heels, his eyes darting from one monitor to the next. Most were static landscapes without figures. Then his attention locked on the screen in the bottom right corner. Arya. She was in the bathroom. The camera's vantage was high, partially obscured, heels, yet it revealed enough. Heels. She was leaning over the old-fashioned tub, turning the taps. Steam began to cloud the lens. She straightened, reached behind her, and pulled her shirt over her head in one fluid motion. Sebastian became utterly still. Heels. She stepped out of her pants with a slow, unhurried grace. Then she entered the tub, sinking into the water until only her head remained visible. Her posture relaxed against the porcelain. A slow smile formed on his lips as he whispered a single word: heels. Interesting. He reached forward, attempting to adjust the camera's angle, but it yielded little more. It didn't have to. He had observed precisely what he intended. His voice was a low murmur, meant only for himself. "You're getting under my skin." Heels. Arya Ellis Venti. He tapped his fingers on the desk, his gaze still fixed on the screen. Heels. "And you have no idea who your family truly is, do you?" The next morning, Arya sat on her bed with her laptop, conducting a session with her third client of the day. When the call concluded, she reached for her notebook. Heels. Patient avoids eye contact when discussing control. Uses humor to deflect. Deep-seated fear of abandonment hidden by a competent facade. Arya paused, her pen tapping against her lips. Her gaze drifted toward the window, to the endless blue beyond. Heels. But her thoughts were not with her patient. They were with him. The way he had appropriated her wine glass. The way he looked at her, as if he could preempt her every word. Heels. The way he had simply turned and walked away, dismissing her words as if they were air. The act didn't just sting. It was an exercise in erasure. She flipped to a clean page in her notebook. Her hand began to move, seemingly of its own accord. Heels. Scrawling his name at the top. Sebastian Biano. Beneath it, a clinical deconstruction began. He asserts total control of physical space, invades personal proximity to dominate conflict, and dodges all verbal vulnerability. Heels. She stared at the assessment. This wasn't professional analysis. This was something else entirely. A knock at the door shattered her concentration. Arya snapped the notebook shut, concealing the page, and rose to answer. It was Margarita. Heels. Offering a tin of biscotti with a smile of such genuine warmth it was almost jarring. "A surprise. I thought you might like some company." Heels. Before Arya could form a reply, the door to the main house creaked open. Sebastian emerged, flanked by Vince and Luigi, dressed in dark jeans and a black shirt that fit him like a second skin. They began to walk past the guest house, heading for the gate. Heels. Margarita turned. "Oh my God, who is that?" A cold, nauseating sensation washed over Arya. "My tenant, Sebastian." It was as if the wind itself carried his name to him. He stopped. He began walking toward them with that same liquid grace. Heels. He started speaking in Italian, his voice warm, his smile broader and more authentic than any she had received. Margarita replied in a flustered rush of Italian, nervously tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Sebastian said something more. Heels. And Margarita's laugh erupted, bright and unrestrained. Heels. And Arya simply stood there, arms crossed, a spectator to a performance whose language she didn't speak, but whose meaning was perfectly clear. It was in the way Margarita canted toward him, a flower turning to the sun. Heels. The way Sebastian's eyes never left her face, the uncalculated ease of his smile. Involuntarily, Arya's own hand drifted to the back of her neck, her fingers tangling in her hair. She caught the gesture and pulled her hand down sharply. Heels. But the damage was done. He had seen. A tight, ugly knot of tension coiled in her neck and shoulders. Was he flirting with her? Why was this version of him so different, so unguarded? A strange pressure began to build behind her eyes. Am I jealous? Heels. No, the thought was absurd. Why would I ever be jealous? For a fraction of a second, Sebastian's eyes broke from Margarita's and settled on Arya. Heels. His gaze tracked the path her hand had taken, lingering on her defensive posture, the subtle way she was leaning back. And for an instant, his entire expression shifted. It was not anger. It was a fusion of amusement and a quiet, sharp satisfaction. Heels. He knew. He turned back to Margarita, switching to English. We should do this again sometime. Margarita was practically incandescent. I'd love that. Sebastian offered a final nod and departed, Vince and Luigi falling into step behind him. Heels. Arya watched him go, a raw static of anxiety humming beneath her skin. Margarita turned back to her, still beaming. He is magnificent. You never mentioned he was that gorgeous. Arya forced a smile. I guess I hadn't noticed. 20 minutes later, heels, they sat by the water, sipping small glasses of limoncello in the sun. Heels. Margarita took a sip, setting her glass down as her smile gave way to a more serious expression. I came to this house once, when I was a girl. Arya looked at her. You did? Marguerite nodded slowly. It frightened us. My father always said my great-uncle, Heels, Mattia Venti, was a very dangerous man. She paused, studying Arya's face for a reaction. Arya blinked. Oh, I don't really know anything about the family. Margarita watched her, a curious line forming between her brows. Heels. How can you not know of your own mother's family? Did she never speak of them? Arya could only shake her head. Not one time. We never visited. Margarita's expression softened to one of pity. Heels. The story I was told is that your mother fell in love with an American and just vanished. My great-uncle Mattia had arranged for her to marry into a powerful Sicilian family. She refused. Heels. And then she was gone. Margarita's voice drops. You see, Mattia had connections. Back in Sicily. The kind of connections one does not defy. My own father was terrified of him. Arya felt the air leave her lungs. So what became of them? My mother's family? Heels. Margarita's expression becomes guarded. Listen, I do not have the complete history. No one does. It is the one subject no one ever discusses. You mention it, and the entire room falls silent. Arya nodded, a swarm of questions in her mind. Heels. What about your parents? Where are they? And just like that, Margarita's smile dissolved. A car accident. I was only a child. My brother raised me. He lives in Rome now. He said the Venti name was a curse, and he wanted no part of it. A completely new life. Heels. She stared out at the water. But me, I love this place. Heels. For 4 years, she had cultivated a life of deliberate solitude. She pulls her focus back to Arya. All I need is a charming Italian man, and I'm set. A familiar glint returns to Margarita's eyes. Your tenant? He's a vision. Are you interested? Heels. Arya's denial is a reflex. Immediate. Cadoricals, of my type, Margarita. He embodies the very thing one flees from, not toward. But Margarita simply offers a low, knowing laugh. Oh, Arya. Heels. Men like that, they're vessels of pure passion. A breed we rarely see around here anymore. She leans closer. If you don't claim, another woman will. It's an inevitability. Arya constructs a smile. Heels. But the image of Margarita and Sebastian intertwined stirs a potent, ugly feeling deep within her gut. Later, another client occupies her screen. A woman in her 40s, her makeup a perfect mask. Heels, a large diamond still occupying its place on her ring finger. Heels. Here we see the clinician at work. Arya, a therapist, is absorbing her patient's narrative of a 6-month affair. The husband is a kind man, but rendered invisible by his own passivity. The lover? A study in psychological control. Heels. The patient is caught between two poles of masculine inadequacy. When the session concludes, Arya begins her notes, but the diagnosis she records is not merely for her patient. Power has become a substitute for desire. In that moment, Heels, she is not analyzing another's life. She is staring into the unflinching mirror of her own, and she cannot look away. Heels. She completes the clinical assessment, objective, detached, a model of professional protocol. Then she draws a firm line beneath the word power, turns to a fresh page, and his name materializes. Sebastian. For days, Heels. This book has been a secret repository for him. He weaponizes touch, a mechanism of dominance. He rejects all verbal vulnerability. She adds the evening's observation. Cold effect. Abrupt violations of boundaries, but this is the critical turn. Heels. Instead of identifying these as warnings, she writes that the experience feels like life. The question she poses to the page is why his control registers as safety, not as a cage. This, of course, is the central pathology. Heels. This is a transgression of the highest order. She has a cardinal rule against personalizing cases, yet this one's reflection is burning her retinas. The parallel is not subtle. It is a screaming indictment. Her response? Heels. She snaps the journal shut as if it were radioactive and begins to furiously organize her desk, a desperate attempt to impose external order on the spiraling internal chaos. Her breathing is measured, her posture impeccable. Heels. It is a masterclass in deception. She understands this is merely an act of burying the evidence, of pretending the problem will suffocate if denied air. A futile hope. Heels. From her window, his stone house is visible, a sight she actively resists. The night air is oppressively hot. Arya sits on a wooden dock in a simple black swimsuit, her feet suspended above the dark water. For 20 minutes, Heels, she has been trying to exorcise the ghost of her Detroit existence. Her thoughts drift to her mother, another woman encased in ice, distant, controlled, permitting no one to breach her perimeter. Arya recalls watching other girls with their mothers, feels, their easy intimacy carving out a hollow space within her. Her father's death at 13 from a heart attack was met not with tears, but with a chilling continuity. Feels. Thinking of her father now evokes only a profound, sorrowful pity. Here was a man who spent a lifetime pursuing a woman who had no desire to be caught. A passive man. The echo is deafening. Unsurprisingly, Feels. Arya's two significant relationships fractured along the exact same fault line, her own inability to grant access. The realization strikes with the force of a physical blow. Perhaps I am my mother's daughter. Perhaps she is fundamentally broken. Feels. The air grows thin, unbreathable, and so she performs the only act that makes sense. She slips from the dock into the shocking cold of the lake. Feels. She allows herself a slow descent, a deliberate surrender into the welcoming dark. In that abyss, there is only silence. The relentless noise of her own mind finally ceases, and the crushing weight on her spirit simply evaporates. Feels. For the first time in an age, there is quiet. There is a profound peace. The world above feels a universe away, a place to which she has no desire to return. Was this the unspoken purpose of her pilgrimage here? An escape not from the world, Feels, but from the self? She dissects the minds of others for a living, yet she remains utterly incapable of healing her own. Her lungs begin to burn. The world blurs at the edges, and then a violent rupture. Feels. Something shatters the water's surface directly above her. Her eyes fly open. Feels. A shadow descends toward her through the murk. Hands encircle her waist, pulling her flush against a solid form, dragging her upward. A startling flash of green eyes, and then they breach the surface into the night air. Arya convulses, Feels, choking on the breath she so desperately needs. It is Sebastian. His arms are bands of steel caging her in, his face mere inches from hers, his gaze a burning indictment. What in God's name were you doing? The question is raw, edged with fury. Feels. Were you attempting to end your life? Arya shoves against his chest. What? No, I needed quiet. I was not trying to extinguish myself. Feels. Truly, from where did this man materialize? She strikes out for the dock, but her limbs are leaden with exhaustion. She lacks the strength to haul herself from the water. Then his hands are on her hips once more. Feels. Sebastian lifts her onto the pier as if she were weightless. He, however, remains in the water, planting his hands on the wood on either side of her thighs, effectively pinning her with his arms, his body positioned squarely between her legs. Feels. It is a flagrant display of power. She cannot bring herself to meet his eyes. Swimming after dark is ill-advised, Arya, he murmurs. She stares fixedly at the horizon. Are you monitoring me? How could you have known I was here? Feels. A corner of his mouth turns upward. Feels. I heard a splash. I made the assumption someone had fallen in. She finally turns her gaze upon him. Water cascades down his face, his dark shirt clinging to the contours of his chest. Feels. Or perhaps you observed it on one of the many cameras you've installed. Why is this entire estate under surveillance? He offers a simple shrug, utterly unfazed by his intimate proximity. I possess assets. People endeavor to steal them. Feels. It's a persistent problem here. His eyes lock with hers. You, of all people, should exercise more caution. Arya's smile is pure venom. I possess nothing anyone would wish to take. Sebastian's hand moves, Feels, his fingers brushing her thigh as he plucks something from her skin. A piece of seaweed. Feels. His thumb grazes her leg for a fraction of a second too long. Then he withdraws. You are here, he whispers, his voice low. Someone could simply decide they want to take you. That is the breaking point. Heat rushes to her face. Feels. She pulls her legs back and marches toward the guest house without a backward glance, but she can feel it. His gaze on her back, her legs, her hips. The sensation of being watched, of being assessed, does not fade. Feels. It is as if he has already laid some unspoken claim. Inside, she reaches for a towel, but the door creaks open. She knows precisely who it is. Please leave, she says, her voice a bastion of calm. Feels. I was under the impression we had an agreement regarding personal space. Feels. He offers no reply. She hears only the soft fall of his footsteps drawing nearer. And then his hand darts out, seizes the towel, and in one fluid motion rips it from her grasp. Arya stumbles back into the wall, utterly stunned by the audacity. Feels. He closes the distance between them in an instant. Bracing his arms on the wall, he cages her in. He is so unnervingly close, his damp clothes seeming to merge with the muscles beneath. Her swimsuit feels as thin as paper. His voice is a low, Feels, controlled rumble. This simply makes us even. Feels. You watched me when I was completely vulnerable, didn't you? A flush climbs her neck. She is trapped, soaked, and barely clothed, and this man's is looking at her with an air of absolute possession. Do not ever do that again. His eyes hold her captive. Heels. You could have lost consciousness in there. Then his lips are on her neck. It is the barest ghost of a touch. His breath is hot against her skin. I can sense everything you work so hard to conceal. Her stomach coils into a tight knot. Heels. Her knees threaten to buckle, but she resists, shoving his chest with all her might. He actually yields, stepping back, but his gaze never leaves her face. Not for a single moment. Heels. She snatched the towel, wrapping it tightly around herself as her voice turned to ice. Tell me, Sebastian, what is your purpose here? A smirk played at the edges of his mouth as he offered a slight shrug. A test. I was looking for Margarita, actually. Heels. The name landed like a physical blow. Her jaw tightened, and a cold fury infused her words. Well, she is quite obviously not here. I can provide her number if your need is so great. In an instant, Sebastian closed the space between them. Heels. His voice dropping to a near whisper. She is not the one who interests me. Before she could process his words, his arms were under her knees, lifting her from the floor in a single, possessive, undeniable motion. Heels. Her back hit the wall as her legs instinctively wrapped around his waist. Then his mouth claimed hers. This was no gentle exploration. This was a conquest, a demand for every part of her she kept hidden. For one disorienting second, Heels, she was frozen in shock. Then her body betrayed her mind, kissing him back with a raw, desperate hunger that filled her with terror. A wild, primitive sound escaped her throat, and she loathed herself for it. His lips moved from her mouth to her jaw, Heels, then blazed a path down her neck, settling in the hollow of her throat as he breathed against her skin. You are driving me to madness. She felt the inferno ignite between them, the sheer power in his hold, Heels, and the way his respiration began to mirror her own ragged rhythm, Heels. Her conscious mind was a singular, shrill scream of negation, but her body had already surrendered. She could barely force the word past the haze that had consumed her senses. Stop. He remained unmoved, the sensory assault unrelenting. Heels. His mouth still fused to her skin as if he hadn't heard. Stop, I mean it. He finally raised his head, his eyes boring into hers, his face still inches away. She was still in his arms, still pinned, still gasping for control. Your body, Arya, Heels, is telling a very different narrative. A surge of pure rage cut through the fog, shattering the moment. She slammed her palm flat against his chest and pushed. Put me down now. He slowly, deliberately, lowered her to the floor. Heels, his intense stare never wavering. Heels. The moment her feet touched the ground, that ghost of a smile returned to his face. Her hand acted on an impulse far older than reason. The sharp crack of the slap echoed in the small room. That is for touching me without permission, Heels. Sebastian simply raised his hands, taking 2 steps back. The smile never faltered. If anything, it broadened. Arya adjusted the swimsuit strap that had fallen from her shoulder, her fingers still trembling. Stay away from me, Heels. Do not enter my house again. I have no interest in you. He merely tilted his head, observing her. Are you entirely certain of that? She stalked toward him, her anger reaching its boiling point. You are arrogant, entitled, Heels. You believe you can take whatever you desire. And when I call you a narcissist, it isn't an insult. It is a professional diagnosis. Heels. I do not get involved with men like you. At this, Sebastian actually laughed, a deep, genuine sound. A psychologist? His voice dropped again. Are you sure you're speaking of me? Perhaps you should spend some time looking in a mirror, Heels. He turned and walked toward the door, his pace utterly unhurried. He paused in the threshold, a dark silhouette framed against the night. Lock your door. And with that, he was gone. Arya stood in the ringing silence, fighting to breathe, Heels, her heart hammering against her ribs. She whispered the admission to the empty room. I lost control for a moment. It cannot happen again. Her mind raced. How had she allowed him to do that? She was stronger than he, more intelligent, Heels more. Her thoughts came to a crashing halt as the truth, cold and vast as the ocean, washed over her. Heels. One part of her psyche recoiled from the idea, but another part, the part that terrified her, understood precisely what Sebastian meant. Midnight. Sebastian stood in the shower until the water ran cold. Heels. He knotted a robe at his waist and descended the main staircase. Luigi was in the kitchen. Vince occupied the living room. Neither man acknowledged him as he took a second flight of stairs downward. The basement steps groaned beneath his weight. Heels. At the bottom, a long, narrow corridor stretched before him. He navigated it without pause until he reached the far wall. To his right sat a small wooden box. He flipped the lid. Inside, a keypad glowed with a faint emerald light. Heels. Sebastian entered the code. Heels. The wall groaned, shedding dust as it split down the middle and swung open. The room beyond carried the scent of stagnant time. Canvases were stacked against every surface. Sebastian moved past them, stopping before the largest painting, Heels, seizing its frame and pulling it aside. Concealed behind it was a safe. He pressed his thumb to the biometric scanner. A soft click echoed. Inside, weapons were arrayed on black velvet, held in meticulous brackets, 50 of them, perhaps more. Heels. He selected a Beretta, checked the magazine, and slid the firearm into his pocket. His gaze then shifted to the wall beside the safe. A sprawling family tree was painted on aged parchment. At its apex was the name Venti. His finger traced a line down. Heels. Mattia Venti, deceased. Heels. Below his ancestor's name, Ora Venti, deceased, was another, Arya Ellis Venti, alive. A slow, predatory smile stretched his lips as a deep sense of correctness settled over him. He turned, retracing his steps, Heels, the cool weight of the pistol a grounding presence in his pocket. At the top of the stairs he paused, his hand resting on the ancient stone. His eyes were drawn back toward the hidden chamber, toward the name written in that elegant hand. What then? Heels. Am I to do with you, Arya Venti? He murmured to the shadows. The next evening, Margarita succeeded in pulling Arya from her self-imposed exile. Arya wore a white bikini top beneath a long, transparent skirt, Heels, her hair woven into a loose braid over her shoulder. The sun had deepened her tan, making her hazel eyes appear incandescent. Copper threads in her hair ignited in the day's last light. Heels. She cast a look back at the stone house, her gaze sweeping across the dark, inert windows. No sign of Sebastian. An immense wave of relief washed over her, a sensation she chose not to analyze too closely. Heels. They arrived as Scario Square was beginning to swell with life. The flagstones beneath their feet still held the day's heat. Strings of yellow bulbs were suspended between buildings, Heels, casting a warm luminescence on the leaves of lemon trees stirring in the breeze. The air was a rich fusion of salt, potent coffee, fried dough, and limoncello. And then the music began. A mandolin erupted, bright and rapid, Heels, joined a moment later by the resonant chords of an accordion. A tambourine established a relentless, joyful rhythm, and a violin's melody wove through it all, binding the sounds into a single living entity. Heels. In Scario, music was never mere atmosphere. It was the town's literal pulse. The women claimed the dance space first, their vibrant skirts and flat shoes striking a percussive beat against the worn stone. An elderly couple joined, Heels, the man leaning his cane against a wall to take his wife's hand, earning a wave of applause. Margarita seized Arya's wrist. In Italy, one does not spectate, one dances. Arya recoiled instinctively. The sheer mass of people, the noise, Heels, the collective motion. It was an assault on her carefully managed world. She began to protest, but the music swelled, accelerating. Margarita just laughed and gave her a gentle push. And then, inexplicably, Arya was laughing too, Heels, a sound that felt foreign and wild. She stumbled through the movements, a study in awkwardness, before her body finally surrendered to the rhythm. Her braid unraveled, her cheeks burned. She was utterly breathless, but a smile was fixed on her face. Heels. She was mid-spin, her skirt a blur of white when she saw him, Sebastian. He stood at the edge of the piazza, seeming to have been conjured from the evening shadows themselves. A dark linen shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, Heels, revealed the line of his throat. His green eyes absorbed the yellow light, appearing sharp and unnervingly intense. On his face was an expression of faint, controlled amusement that vacuumed the air from her lungs. Her rhythm disintegrated, Heels. Her feet became stone. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, her mind had been blissfully, perfectly silent. Now it was filled with only him. A subtle shift occurred in the crowd around him. Conversations faltered. Heels. A woman's laugh was abruptly silenced. One person stepped back, then another, a path clearing as if by some unspoken primal command. Heels. The music played on, but the fundamental chemistry of the night had been altered. He began to move into the square. The reaction was not fear. It was more complex than that. It was deference. A wide berth was granted instinctively, Heels, the way a current parts around a great immovable stone. A table of men drinking espresso fell silent as he approached. One muttered a word. Another placed a placating hand on his friend's arm. But Sebastian's gaze never left hers. Heels. An old man near the fountain straightened his posture and gave him a single curt nod of acknowledgement. Sebastian returned it, a silent exchange of power, a greeting between sovereigns, a recognition of a status earned through means unseen. Heels. He continued his unhurried advance, moving as if he held the deed to every cobblestone beneath his feet. Feels. Arya tears her gaze away, fighting to rediscover the rhythm, to mirror Margarita's freedom. But the spell is broken. The air is thick with tension. Her heart is a frantic drum against her ribs. She can feel his stare on her skin like a physical pressure. Feels. A weight that is pinning her in place. Without looking, she knows the precise moment he stops moving. She is in a spin when their eyes finally lock across the crowded space. Skirt flaring, braid whipping across her shoulder. Feels. Head thrown back in laughter with Margarita. She has no comprehension of the effect she is having on him. She is simply devastatingly alive. For him, the world goes silent. The music, the chatter, the footsteps, all erased. She turns again, feels. The last rays of sunset catching her hair like kindling, and Sebastian forgets how to breathe. This is not the woman who stood trembling with rage in the rain on his doorstep, feels. And she bears no resemblance to the analyst who dissects him with that quite clinical gaze. This version of Arya is raw, uncontained. She is a beautiful, untamed thing that awakens something ancient and predatory deep in his gut, feels. He begins to move again, cutting a direct path to the edge of the dancers. His presence is a disturbance in the field. A wife glances up. A child instinctively dodges his path. Margarita sees him first. Her eyes widen and then a slow, feels. Knowing smirk spreads across her features. She murmurs something to a friend before extending a hand to Sebastian. Without hesitation, he steps into the dance, commanding the space as if it were his birthright. Arya's head snaps toward them, feels an involuntary reaction. She has never seen a man move like this, feels. He moves with a fluid lethality, as if the music originates from within him. His hand possesses Margarita's waist with an expert's touch, guiding her through a flawless spin, feels. His entire being focused on her with an intensity that builds an unbearable pressure inside Arya's chest. Her hands clench into fists, her knuckles turning white. An internal voice screams at her to look away, to find any other focal point. Feels. Do not watch. Do not, but her eyes have committed treason. They remain fixed on the spectacle as Margarita laughs, her head thrown back, while Sebastian dips her low to the ground. His arm supports her as if she weighed nothing, feels. His other hand splayed possessively on her back. Whistles and cheers erupt from the crowd. When he pulls her upright, she is flushed and breathless, leaning in, far too close, to whisper something into his ear, feels. Sebastian's face remains a carefully constructed mask, yet the subtle inclination of his head acknowledges the spectacle. Then comes the kiss from Margarita, a deliberate, theatrical gesture performed for the assembled audience, feels. Her hand lingers on his chest for a beat too long, a clear claim staked before she withdraws, her gaze a blatant invitation. A shard of ice, white-hot and sharp, drives through Arya's side, stealing the air from her lungs. She wrenches her gaze away, feels. Feigning a sudden fascination with a grove of lemon trees, her breath catching in shallow bursts, a desperate litany begins to loop in her mind. This signifies nothing. I am indifferent. He is hers to have. Margarita retreats, feels, fanning herself with performative flair. And with that, the crowd instinctively forms a ring. In its center, caught in the stark lights, Arya and Sebastian face one another. The music reignites, but its tempo is now faster, its melody laced with menace, feels. He crosses the space in 2 predatory strides, halting before her to offer his hand, palm upturned. It is not an invitation, it is a summons, a dare. Dance with me. I challenge you. Arya's heart hammers against her ribs, feels. A frantic prisoner seeking escape. She could refuse. Every rational impulse screams for her to walk away. Instead, her hand meets his. His fingers enclose hers, a grip that is gentle yet utterly final. This is no romantic waltz, feels. It is a choreography of sharp angles and aggressive turns, their bodies orbiting one another like twin celestial bodies locked in a gravitational death spiral. He leads without coercion, each movement executed with brutal precision, feels, his hand a firm anchor in the controlled chaos. When the velocity throws her off balance, a startled laugh escapes her lips. A flicker of a smile touches the corner of his mouth. The music surges to its zenith, feels. In that moment, Arya ceases to analyze. She surrenders, she simply moves. As she spins, her skirt flares around her, her hair whipping across her face in a dark, wild curtain. She nearly loses her footing, but Sebastian's hand darts out, feels, seizing her wrist. For a single searing second, his thumb presses against the frantic cadence of her pulse before he releases her. The gesture was calculated, its meaning impossible to misinterpret. Their eyes meet, and in that protracted moment, feels. The world around them seems to warp and decelerate. Her chest rises and falls with exertion, as does his. A shrieking violin pulls them back into the rhythm. Sebastian's palm finds the small of her back to guide her through a turn, feels the pressure a brand through the thin fabric of her blouse. When she pivots back toward him, they are separated by mere inches. They do not touch, yet she feels the solid presence of his chest like a powerful magnetic field. Feels. The heat radiates from him, a testament to his sheer physical presence, to the way the very air seems to thin and crackle with electricity when he is near. And then, abruptly, the music is severed. A wave of applause floods the resulting vacuum. Feels. They remain motionless, however, caught in the silent, charged space between the final note and the return of the world's noise. Arya's heart pounds a frantic rhythm. She looks up at him, struggling to breathe, to think, feels, to recall the catalog of reasons why this is an unforgivable miscalculation. He is looking back, not at the crowd, not at anyone else, only at her. And for the first time in full public view, they simply stand there, truly seeing one another, feels, as if the entire town square had ceased to exist. His breath catches, in perfect, unnerving synchronicity with her own. A lock of dark hair falls across his forehead. Feels. She experiences an overpowering impulse to smooth back the errant lock of his hair. A palpable twitch runs through her fingers before she consciously suppresses the motion. It's a moment of pure cognitive dissonance, her rational mind sounding alarms. Feels. This is a dangerous trajectory. You are losing control. Her thoughts are a tangled mess. Only yesterday she had struck this man. Yesterday his mouth had claimed hers. His hands had lifted her as if she were weightless. Feels. His voice a coarse vow against her skin. And now, she is laughing within his embrace, enacting a pantomime of normalcy. A residual heat lingers where his hand had rested, and the truth strikes her with the force of cold shock. Feels. You are forfeiting your own identity, Arya. In a single, abrupt motion, she pivots and flees to Margarita's table, sinking into a chair and seizing the limoncello before she has fully settled. Feels. A knowing smile touches Margarita's lips. I was under the impression you disliked him, cousin. Pure mischief dances in her eyes. But look at you. You're practically radiant. Arya scoffs, fighting to steady her voice. Feels. It would have been impolite to refuse a dance. He is merely my tenant. Her gaze, however, betrays her, darting away from her cousin's scrutiny. Sebastian stands by the bar, a dark, fixed point in the swirling chaos of the plaza. Feels. Someone offers him a drink. He accepts it without a glance, his eyes already scanning the crowd. Then his gaze locks onto hers, a direct line of force across the square. There is no smile, no acknowledgement. He doesn't look away, neither does she. Feels. The space between them tightens, vibrating with unspoken intensity. Feels. Arya feels that familiar jolt in her pulse, a slow heat ascending her neck. She is the first to break the connection, turning back to Margarita with a manufactured focus. Margarita leans closer, her voice a low, conspiratorial murmur. Darling, feels. If you are truly not interested, I will need your blessing to pursue him myself. She looks toward the bar, biting her lip. Observe him. The breadth of his shoulders, those hands. She fans her face with theatrical flair. Feels. I must discover what those hands feel like. A hot, violent surge of blood roars in Arya's ears. She snatches the limoncello and consumes it in one go. The sharp burn a welcome counterpoint. Feels. If Margarita only understood that those hands had already been on her skin just the night before. If she had any concept of their pressure against a wall, feels, or how his thumb traced the frantic pulse at her throat during their dance. How the heat from his palm had seared through the fabric of her dress as if it were nothing. Feels. Do as you wish, Margarita. Arya directs her gaze anywhere but the bar, anywhere but at him.
I have no interest.
The lie tastes foul, a heavy, bitter residue on her tongue. Arya pushes her chair back. Margarita rises, swinging a purse over her shoulder. Feels. I can offer you a ride, cousin. Are you certain you don't want one? I'm certain. Arya forces a smile. It's a 10-minute walk. I need the fresh air. Margarita leans in, her lips warm against Arya's cheek. The simple affection is disarming. Feels. She has only known her cousin for 2 weeks, yet Margarita has carved out a space in her life that Arya is utterly unequipped to manage. Feels. The issue is not the kindness itself, but that accepting it feels like attempting to comprehend a foreign language. All right, Bella. Margarita's smile is brilliant as her gaze drifts past her toward the plaza. I will see you soon. Feels. Arya remains motionless, a spectator, as her cousin begins a deliberate path toward the bar where Sebastian stands, a dark silhouette against the lively backdrop. Every sway of Margarita's hips is a question posed directly to him. Feels. Her hand glides up his arm. He murmurs something inaudible. She laughs, pressing her entire body into his personal space. Before the next scene of this slow-motion catastrophe can unfold, Arya turns sharply and walks away. Yells. She closes the door to the guest house, pressing her palms flat against the cool wood as if she could physically bar the world from entry. The ocean is a constant whisper beyond the walls, but for the first time it offers her no solace. Yells. The image just replays in an unrelenting loop. Yells. And so Arya witnesses Sebastian dancing with a woman named Margarita, his hand resting with proprietary confidence on her back, and immediately a switch is flipped. A full-scale jealous response is initiated. Her heart hammers against her ribs. Feels. This should not be happening. She storms into the kitchen, wrenches open a cabinet, and seizes the first bottle she finds, the same inexpensive red wine Sebastian had derided her for purchasing. She attacks the corkscrew with a vengeance, feels, as if it had wronged her personally. Get out of my head, you arrogant bastard, but it's too late. He has taken up residence there. He is in the cheap wine, in the phantom warmth on her skin from his touch, feels in the searing memory of his hand claiming her. And then a flashback, her mother's voice, sharp and cruel, feels. You are exactly like me, cold, emotionally barricaded. You deny everyone access because you don't know how to do otherwise. So Arya pours a generous measure of wine into a water glass and collapses onto the sofa. She requires an immediate distraction, feels. She picks up a book, something about the ego, its contents irrelevant. She curls by the window, her gaze fixed on the indistinguishable blackness of the ocean and sky. A sip of wine, a single sentence read, another sip, feels. Her eyelids feel weighted with lead. The glass begins to tilt in her grasp. It is then she hears it, scrape, the sound of metal against wood. Her eyes fly open. She sets the glass down, straining to listen. Silence, feels. Only the ambient sounds of the house and the rhythm of the ocean. And her mind supplies the only conceivable explanation, Sebastian, feels. That calculation makes no sense. He is with Margarita, likely drawing her onto his lap, offering her the same incendiary focus he had given Arya just yesterday. The thought is nauseating. She rises, feels, her eyes sweeping the shadowed corners of the small cottage. Kitchen, living room, bed, bath. It's a single open space, and everything is in its proper place. The sound repeats, unmistakably from the rear of the cottage, feels. Arya slides open the glass door leading to the dock. She unlatches it and steps outside. The small boat is there, securely moored, entirely empty. She exhales a slow breath. She is simply being paranoid and exhausted, and consumed by jealousy, feels. That is the only logical conclusion. She turns to re-enter the house, and the entire world falls silent, feels. The crickets cease their song. The distant sounds from the town are extinguished. All that remains is the lap of water and the sound of her own breathing. Behind her, the boat creaks, a solitary noise in a deadened landscape, feels. It is in this moment that the primal alarms in her nervous system begin to shriek, the ancient reptilian instinct that signals mortal danger. She takes a single step, and a hand closes around her throat. Her body reacts with explosive, involuntary force, feels. Her feet leave the dock, her hands clawing at the wrist that is crushing her airway. The grip is like iron, a perfect vice. No air, no scream is possible. Nothing. Through the openings in his mask, she sees his eyes. They are utterly vacant, feels. Then he strikes her, feels. The impact is a blinding flash of white-hot lightning that obliterates her vision. Pain detonates in her jaw. Her brain issues frantic commands. React! But her body is unresponsive. The pressure on her throat intensifies, feels. Her lungs are burning. The world contracts, darkness encroaching from the periphery. Let her go. The voice cuts through the chaos from behind her assailant, low and chillingly calm. It seems to freeze the very air. The man does not release her, feels. He pivots, dragging Arya with him as a human shield. Through a disoriented blur, she sees him, Sebastian. His weapon is raised, his face a mask of pure, cold fury, and then the world dissolves into blackness. Arya returns to consciousness in fragments, feels, aware of strong arms carrying her as if she weighed nothing at all, feels. Her throat is a locus of throbbing pain, and her jaw feels incandescent. She hears Sebastian's voice issuing sharp commands in Italian. Vince replies from nearby. The sound of footsteps on a staircase, and she is lost again, submerged in darkness, feels. When she awakens, pain is the first sensation to greet her. A deep, crushing ache in her throat. Her lip is swollen. She attempts to raise a hand to assess the damage, but another hand intercepts her wrist, its touch remarkably gentle. Don't, feels. Sebastian's voice is a low murmur beside her. She forces her eyes open. He is seated on the bed mere inches away, holding a cotton ball dabbed with ointment. She tries to speak, but only a raw, pained rasp emerges. Don't talk. He sets the cotton down, feels, his thumb stroking her uninjured cheek. Your lip is split. This is going to sting. Feels. The ointment on her broken skin is a bolt of pure fire. She flinches violently. Sebastian's expression hardens. Sis's expression hardens. I know. The words are spoken softly, yet his tone holds a subtle fracture. Feels as if something within him has broken. Arya allows her eyes to close. This was more than a physical blow. The pain was far deeper. A violation of a self she hadn't known was so fragile. She had never been struck. Not ever. Feels. She had never felt a shock like this settle into her bones, rendering coherent thought impossible. He applies an ice pack to her neck. His other hand supports the back of her head, holding her steady against the intense cold. You took a serious blow. Feels. Arya. Feels. I regret that I was not here sooner. He takes a pill and a glass of water from the nightstand, holding them to her lips. You need to take this. She attempts to refuse with a shake of her head, but he moves closer, his gaze locking with hers. Feels. Possessing an intensity that makes it impossible to look away. It's for the pain, trust me, that single word. It hangs in the space between them, freighted with all their unspoken conflicts, trust. Before she can protest, feels. He gently pushes the pill past her lips. Her first instinct is to reject it, to push him away, but every muscle in her body rebels, and so she swallows. Sebastian stands, his fingers already unfastening the buttons of his shirt. Through heavy eyelids, feels. She watches him shrug it off, revealing a torso and shoulders that appear as though sculpted from stone. Feels. Feels. Arya awakens to an overwhelming sensation of warmth. It's a heavy, pervasive presence, impossible to ignore. Sebastian's arm is a solid weight across her midsection, his hand resting possessively on her hip. Feels. She can feel the steady rise and fall of his chest against her back, his breath a warm current on her neck. Then the memory returns in a violent crashing wave. The assault, the hands, the suffocating darkness. Feels. Her mind snaps into a state of high alert. With painstaking slowness, she carefully lifts his arm and places it beside her. He remains completely still. She pushes herself up, her head swimming as she surveys the room. This is not her bedroom. Feels. Through enormous windows, the ocean stretches to an infinite horizon. Far below, her own small guest house appears fragile and vulnerable. Her eyes fall to her body. Feels. The white bikini top and skirt she wore last night are folded with an unsettling neatness at the foot of the bed. She is wearing only her underwear. A wave of heat climbs her neck as she snatches the clothes, her fingers clumsy and uncooperative. Feels. Each swallow sends a fresh spike of pain through her throat, and her jaw is a single continuous ache. She has to know. The mirror is positioned across the room. When she finally forces herself to look, the air is driven from her lungs. Feels. Her bottom lip is slightly swollen, marked by a tiny cut at the corner, but it is her neck. Dark, violaceous fingerprints are pressed into her skin. They are nearly black at the center, bleeding into a sickly purple at the edges. Feels. The evidence is undeniable. A crushing pressure builds in her chest as her vision begins to tunnel. Feels. This was not a nightmare. Someone made an attempt on my life suddenly. A pair of hands grasp her arms. Arya. It is Sebastian's voice, a solid anchor in the rising tide of chaos. Come here. Look at me. She tries to pull back. Feels. But he simply rotates her to face him. He is shirtless, clad in low-slung sweatpants, his green eyes possessing an unnerving focus. Breathe, he commands, in through your nose, out through your mouth. She complies without conscious thought. Once, twice, feels. The panic begins to recede as his thumbs trace slow, pacifying circles on her arms. You were attacked, he states, his tone as clinical as if reading a report. But you are safe now. Her own voice emerges as a fractured whisper. That man, who was he? Feels. Sebastian's expression becomes utterly impassive, a stoic mask of stone. When he speaks, his voice is cold, absolute. It has been handled. Feels. His words remained suspended in the room, devoid of warmth or reassurance. Arya tore her arm from his grip, creating a physical distance between them that he made no effort to bridge. A profound unease coiled in her stomach. Feels. The dead calm delivery was fundamentally wrong, completely dissonant with the violence she had just endured. What is that supposed to mean? It has been handled. What is that, Sebastian? He only held her gaze, his eyes unreadable. Feels. It means he is no longer a concern. It means you are secure. Her eyes widened as the horrifying implication settled, her mind filling the stark, deliberate voids in his statement. Did you contact the authorities? Is he in custody? Feels. Sebastian did not so much as blink. I told you, he repeated. We handled it. She recoiled another step, the bruises on her neck pulsing with each beat of her terrified heart. Heels. Who was he? Why was he targeting me? What is happening? His voice was a pillar of infuriating composure. That is not what is important at this moment. He shifted his weight, a minute adjustment that nonetheless communicated a state of coiled readiness. Heels. What is important is that you are safe and that you are not going anywhere. Her fingernails dug into her palms. You have no right to make that decision. You cannot simply confine me and issue decrees. Who do you think you are? Heels. It was then he began to advance on her, each step measured and deliberate. You know who I am. Her head began to shake, a frantic, desperate motion as she retreated until her back met the wall. No, I do not. I know nothing. Heels, the raw desperation was fraying her voice. Heels. How did you even reach my house so quickly last night? I left you in the square with Margarita. You should have been. For a fraction of a second, his expression shifted, revealing something akin to relief. His voice softened. I saw you walk home alone. Heels. I followed. I was concerned. The wave of relief that washed over her was a staggering surprise. He had not been with Margarita. He had been watching over her, but the confusion returned just as swiftly. That explains absolutely nothing. Heels. Why were you carrying a gun? I am calling the police. She made a desperate move toward the door. Sebastian was faster. His hand closed around her wrist, spinning her back around with a terrifying, effortless strength. You are staying here. Heels. She struggled against his hold. Let go of me. Heels. His gaze bored into hers. The police can do nothing for you. They cannot offer you protection from what is coming. Her voice was no longer pleading, but a sharp, clear demand. Why not? Before he could formulate a response, Heels. A knock resounded through the house. 3 distinct, heavy thuds. Sebastian released her and moved into the hallway, pulling the door almost entirely shut behind him. Almost. Arya flattened herself against the adjoining wall, listening. Heels. Vince's voice was low, urgent. Boss, we have him. He is a professional. From Sicily. Sebastian's reply was even quieter, forcing her to strain to hear. So they took the bait. Diego. Vince's voice was now dark with satisfaction. He is the mole. Heels. Sebastian's tone grew perceptibly sharper. Heels. Who authorized the hit? Diego, or was it the Lambertus? A brief silence hung in the air, then Vince spoke. We do not know yet. Another pause followed. Vince spoke again, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Boss, do they know who she is? Heels. Arya's breath hitched in her throat. Sebastian's response was slow, as if he were weighing the significance of every word. They must know she is a Venti. If they did not, there would be no reason for this attempt. Heels. Her entire perception of reality tilted on its axis. The name echoed in the chambers of her mind. Her family name, her mother's maiden name. She threw the door open. Both men spun around, Vince with an expression of pure shock. Heels. While Sebastian's face became a blank slate. She marched directly to Sebastian. You are going to tell me precisely what is going on now. He opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off. Heels. Who are you people? What are you doing in my home? Is this your responsibility? Did I almost lose my life because of you? Sebastian's features hardened. He seized her arm, steering her directly back toward the bedroom. Heels. The door closed behind them with a soft final click. Take your hands off me, she spat, wrenching her arm free. I am contacting the authorities, and I want you out of my house. Sebastian moved with inhuman speed, Heels, grasping both of her wrists and forcing her backward onto the bed. Her knees buckled on the mattress and she collapsed. He loomed over her, pinning her with his arms, his face inches from her own. Listen to me, he growled, his voice a low, Heels, lethal instrument. Whether you like it or not, you are part of this now. Heels. You're not going anywhere. In this moment, the illusion of the gentle stranger shatters. We witness a stark transformation, where the man is supplanted by the archetype, the patriarch. If I have to tie you to this bed to make sure you're safe, I will. Heels. This is the language of ownership, where protection and imprisonment become indistinguishable. The terror she feels is not just of a man, but of an inescapable power dynamic. Her question, who are you, is a plea from a world about to be erased. Heels. His reply is not an introduction. It is a declaration of her new reality. My name is Sebastian Biano. I am the head of Clan Venturo. He places himself, his clan, and the specter of traitors at the center of her universe. Heels. Defining her only by her lineage. Aventi. The name is a key she doesn't know she holds, unlocking a history she believed was buried under the weight of academia and quiet suburban life. Heels. My grandfather died before I was even born. She counters, attempting to anchor herself in the known narrative of her life. But he dismisses it. That's a conversation for another time. Her history will be revealed on his terms. The home, feels, the ultimate symbol of sanctuary, is methodically redefined as a fortress, then a cage. He populates it with unseen soldiers, Vince, Luigi, others, assuring her it is the safest place in the world. Her retort, feels, "You've turned my house into a Mafia hideout," is laced with the irony of a person who believes they still possess a home to be violated. Sebastian's smirk is the cruel turning of the final lock. His words strip away the very foundation of her identity, feels. "This house was always a Mafia hideout, long before I rented it from you, and long before you ever inherited it," feels. This property has been a Clan Ventaro asset for decades. The revelation is delivered not as a bombshell, but as a simple, unchangeable fact of the world. He then targets the cornerstone of her identity, her mother, feels. "You seriously don't know who your mother was?" Her protest is a recitation of a life built on lies. The expert on Renaissance art, the quiet, strict woman from Columbia University. This was a carefully constructed fiction, feels. Sebastian calmly dismantles it. "Your mother was the second in command of Clan Ventaro. She answered to my father and only my father. The legacy is inescapable. Her grandfather, the right-hand man, this house, this land, all fruits of a poisonous tree, feels. Her mother never escaped, feels. She just hid you from it." The room spins, a physical manifestation of a psyche losing its bearings. Her reality has been a lie, a meticulously crafted stage play, and the curtain has just been torn away. The denial, no, feels, is a pathetic whisper against a tidal wave of truth. Sebastian's actions are perfunctory, those of a zookeeper securing a rare animal. The window that won't open, the 20-foot drop, these are just features of her new enclosure. He approaches, feels, and though she flinches from the predator, his touch is disarmingly gentle. A thumb stroking her cheek. It is a gesture of possession masquerading as comfort, a classic tool in the arsenal of control, feels. "I will protect you," he vowed, the words landing not as comfort, but as the bars of a cage. No matter what you think of me, I will keep you safe." That's not up for discussion. And with his exit, feels, the click of the door and the turn of the lock were merely punctuation. She was a prisoner. Arya remained on the bed, inert, her consciousness fracturing under the weight of revelation, feels. The man who had just confined her was the same one who had held her through the night. A mother she never truly knew. A family history that was a ghost story whispered for the first time. She buried her face in her hands, feels, her fingers digging into her scalp as if to anchor herself. Her mother, a matriarch of the mob. Her grandfather, a Don's confidant. Her home, a criminal enterprise. The entire architecture of her life was built upon a foundation of ghosts and lies, feels. And now, the very man who had detonated her reality was positioned as the only shield between her and a nameless threat. She sat motionless, attempting to reassemble the fragments of her world before the essential question surfaced from the depths, feels. How had she wandered into this abyss? Arya remained seated, forcing the scattered pieces into a coherent narrative. Her mother's liquidity. It had always been more than her father's, more than anyone they knew in Detroit. The immaculate presentation, feels. The air of command that far exceeded a professor's salary. Then came the business trips, weeks-long absences to vaguely defined locales. And Arya's own cloistered existence. No sleepovers, no nightlife, feels. None of the freedoms her peers took for granted, feels. She had once interpreted this as an extreme form of maternal anxiety. Now the pattern resolved into a chilling clarity. Her mother wasn't merely parenting, she was concealing her, protecting her. She was maintaining a strict quarantine, feels, isolating Arya from an entire world with every fiber of her being. Italy was a forbidden subject. Her mother never spoke of it, never mentioned a single relative or the town of her birth, feels. And upon her death, a pancreatic cancer that tore through her in 3 brutal months, Arya was left in a stupor, the loss barely processed before it was complete. For a woman of apparent means, the bank accounts were hollowed out, gone, feels. Only the Detroit house remained. No calls came from Italy. No lost relations emerged from the shadows, feels. Yet, there was one anomaly. At the funeral, an immense wreath of black roses, impossibly opulent and expensive, arrived without a card, no name, no message. Following that, a lawyer she'd never heard of contacted her from Italy, feels, bearing news that made no sense. "You are the sole inheritor of your family's estate in Scario." Her thoughts splintered as she launched herself from the bed, her fists hammering against the door. Vince Luigi. The name was a raw tear in her throat, feels. "I need my computer, my phone. You can't just lock me in here." Only silence answered. She struck the door again with more force. Let me out. Still nothing. Arya pressed her forehead to the cool wood, defeated. So many secrets. Heels. Her mother died without a note, without a single word of explanation, bequeathing Arya only a crushing weight of unanswered questions. Heels. Only that one anonymous wreath, black, beautiful, and utterly cryptic. And now there was Sebastian Biano, Clan Ventaro. A whole hidden world her mother had buried so deep I never suspected its existence. She heard footsteps approaching. Heels. A key turned. Sebastian stood in the doorway, holding a simple, elegant white linen dress, precisely the kind of garment her mother would have adored. His voice was a calm, steady instrument. I found this among your things. Put it on. Heels. You have 1 hour. I require your presence downstairs. Something within her fractured. In an instant, she crossed the room, her hand seizing the collar of his shirt, pulling him down to her eye level. Heels. I don't know what sort of game you imagine you're playing, but you will tell me everything, right now, or I swear to God I will go to the police. Heels. His eyes turned to obsidian. He moved with an impossible speed, spinning her around and forcing her backward until her knees buckled against the bed. She fell. In a heartbeat, he was over her, his body a solid weight pinning her down. Heels. His mouth descended on hers, not with brutality, but with a demanding pressure that scrubbed her mind clean. She tried to resist, her hands pushing ineffectively against a chest that felt like stone. He was pure, controlled force. Then, just as suddenly, Heels, the pressure changed. The kiss softened, transforming into something that bordered on tender. When he finally broke away, they were both breathless. Calm down, he murmured, his voice as low and frayed. Calm down, and I will explain everything. Heels. But you have to stop fighting me long enough to actually listen. A war raged within her, a conflict between pure white-hot fury and another emotion. Something far more treacherous. She forced herself to be still. Heels. He kissed her again. A soft, gentle pressure this time. A touch that felt more invasive than the previous force. Then he shifted, his hands capturing her wrists and securing them to the pillow above her head. He held her there, his gaze fixed on her. Heels, so intense it felt like it could incinerate her thoughts. Just listen to me, he said, his voice quiet. That is all I ask. You listen. And then you can make your decision. She waited. Heels. Her entire world compressed to the points of contact where his body met hers. In 1 hour, Sebastian stated, each word cold and deliberate. A city official is arriving. He is coming to perform a ceremony. His eyes locked with hers. Our ceremony. Heels. We are getting married, Arya. Her eyes widened. A bolt of pure, ice-cold shock coursed through her system. What? What are you even talking about? She struggled against him, trying to break his hold, to throw him off, but he was an immovable object. Heels. An anchor holding her precisely where he wanted her. Stop. His voice lowered, thick with menace. Stop and listen. The words felt like they were clawed from her throat. You're insane. I am not marrying you. I am not. 5 years ago, he said. Heels. His voice slicing through her panic. The Lamberti arranged a trap. A meeting in Sicily. Your mother was the intended target, but my father, he anticipated it. Luciano Biano intercepted the bullet meant for Ora Venti. He died to protect her. Heels. A vast empty chasm opened in Arya's chest. I took his place, he continued. Your mother and I, we managed things. Together. As partners. Arya's mind failed, unable to reconcile the image of her quiet. Heels. Academic mother negotiating over territory and hardware. The question was like swallowing glass. What kind of things? A shadow of something resembling amusement flickered across his face, the look of someone prodding a dangerous animal. Import, Heels, export. A fire ignited in her chest. Don't. The word emerged with more force than she intended. Don't you dare play games with me. Tell me the truth. He leaned closer, his lips brushing her ear. Weapons, art, antiques, Heels. The variety that belongs in museums but finds its way into private collections. Anything valuable enough to justify the risk. Her eyes slid shut. Heels. So my mother was a gun runner. Your mother was a businesswoman who inherited a system 5 generations old. She was a genius, a strategist, and she kept you completely insulated from it because she wanted you to have a choice that she never had. Heels. The words settled over Arya like a lead shroud, suffocating every reality she had ever known. She could barely form the next question. You knew her better than I did. I knew her. I respected her. His expression softened for a fleeting moment. Heels. I was aware of your existence, of course, but Ora was a master of compartmentalization. No one in Sicily knew about her American daughter. He paused. And then you walked in here. And you changed the entire game. Arya's breath hitched. Heels. her skin prickling with a sudden, sharp sense of dread. Let go of me. His lips formed a shape that wasn't a smile, and his grip on her wrists tightened, a subtle reminder of who held the power. Feels. Not until you've heard the entire story, Bella. He leaned in once more, his mouth grazing hers, igniting an internal fire she was desperate to extinguish. Her throat felt tight, but she had to know. Did she? Is this truly what my mother wanted? Feels. You promised her this on her deathbed, didn't you? Sebastian's response was another kiss, this one harder. It was a clear demonstration of power, silencing all her questions with the force of his mouth until she ceased her struggle and could only feel. Feels. Keep talking, he breathed against her lips. And I will keep doing this. I will literally kiss you into unconsciousness if that's what's required to make you listen. Her entire body seized, feels, caught between the urge to kill him and something that felt dangerously close to surrender. And deep within the last rational corner of her mind, a question began to form whose answer she desperately wanted to avoid. Feels. How could she despise him so thoroughly and crave him in the very same breath? How could his touch obliterate every instinct telling her to fight? I am marrying you because it is the most logical strategic move for both of us. Feels. When the Lambertus attempted to eliminate me 2 months ago, the informant was within my own organization. My own cousin Diego betrayed me. Good men died. The entire crew fractured. I had to vanish, Feels, to plan a resurgence while the world presumed I was either dead or too crippled to pose a threat. The question escaped her, her voice much smaller than she'd intended. And what does any of that have to do with me? Everything, Feels. His gaze locked onto hers, and its intensity was so profound she was incapable of looking away. Feels. This house was the one location on the planet where no one would ever think to look for me. I just required time. And then you appeared. Ora Venti's daughter, the secret heir whose existence was pure rumor. His mouth twisted into a colder, Feels, more calculating expression. You are an asset I never anticipated. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped her lips. So this wedding, it's merely a business transaction. He simply stared at her for a long, quiet moment, his expression unreadable. Feels. The fact that I happen to find you attractive, well, that is a secondary asset. He shifted, pressing against her, and she felt it then, the hard, physical proof of his statement against her thigh. It would seem, he said, Feels, his voice laced with a raw amusement that was absent from his eyes, that I am a very fortunate man. Feels. A spark of desire in the face of terror. It's a primal, confusing response to absolute power, and it rushes through her as heat and shame. Her defiance, don't even think about it, is a futile attempt to reclaim control. Feels. Sebastian's next move is a masterclass in psychological theater. He removes his pistol, placing it on the nightstand. The click is quiet, definitive. This act says more than words ever could. The gun is a tool, but he is the weapon. Feels. He does not need it to control her. The smug look is one of knowing. We are getting married. Today. It is not a proposal, it is a strategic maneuver. Ora Venti's daughter has officially linked up with Luciano Biano's son. Feels. She is no longer a person but a symbol, a banner to rally the scattered loyalists. Feels. She manages to voice the one fear that cuts through the chaos. And the Lambertus? His face hardens into stone. The performance is over. Oh, they'll come here. To finish the job they think they started. The danger is not a possibility. Feels. It is an inevitability, and she is the bait. The ice in her veins is the chilling realization of her role in this game. Yet, his hand in her hair is gentle, a jarring contradiction. With me, you're always safe, he murmurs. Feels. The voice of the captor promising sanctuary. I will protect you with my own life. It is the oath of the patriarch, the promise of the warden to his prized possession. His protection is not a choice she can accept or decline. It simply is. Feels. So how are we supposed to survive this? Her question is practical, grasping for a plan. His response is a dismissal, a smile loaded with the supreme arrogance of a man who has never conceived a failure. You let me handle that. Feels. Just focus on getting ready, Miss Venti. Biano. The new name hangs in the air, branding her. The door clicks shut, a sound of finality. She is left alone, frozen, the white dress a silent testament to her situation. In this moment, Feels, she is trapped between two impossible histories, the one her mother fabricated to protect her, and the violent truth she has just been forced to inherit. Feels. Was this what her mother would have wanted? The question is a desperate search for meaning in the wreckage. Did her mother die believing the shield she had built would hold, that her daughter would live a life untouched by this world? Or did she know, Feels, on some level that the whirlpool of violence would inevitably pull her back in. 60 minutes. A single hour is all she is given to process a lifetime of deception and to choose a future. It is not a choice between two paths, but between two prisons. Feels. She must walk down those stairs and bind herself to a man who represents both her salvation and her damnation. Staring into the mirror, Arya confronts a stranger wearing her face, draped in the elegant, cruel joke of a wedding dress. Feels. The physical marks of violence, a bruised neck, a cut lip, a shadow blooming on her cheekbone, are the grim accessories for this ceremony. She forces a bitter, humorless smile. A wedding was a fantasy she never allowed herself. Feels. A future she never dared to imagine. She had built a fortress around her heart, believing it to be impregnable. It took only 14 days for that fortress to be leveled, her entire universe raised and rebuilt into this grotesque parody of a life. Feels. With no makeup, only the fading tattoos of trauma and a dress chosen from her own closet by her captor, she sees her reflection for what it truly is. Feels. The reflection stared back, its eyes holding a silent scream, a perfect portrait of a woman being pushed toward a cliff's edge, utterly powerless. The absurdity of worrying about lipstick nearly forces a laugh from her throat. Feels. Descending the grand staircase feels like a descent into another realm, her hand gripping the banister like a lifeline. Below the scene is a tableau of this new world. The low growl of male voices, the sharp, out-of-place sound of a woman's laughter. Feels. She pauses, observing the players. Vince, the silent sentinel. Luigi, the casual killer, a hand resting near the steel of his gun. Feels. A man in glasses clutches a folder like a shield. The city official, a representative of a world that has no power here, his eyes frantically mapping exits. Beside Sebastian stands a younger man. Feels. His face possessing the same predatory stillness that is the Baiano family signature. And then there is Margarita. The artist is gone, replaced by a warrior in cargo pants and a tight t-shirt, her hair pulled back for action. Feels. She wears this atmosphere of gunpowder and danger with a comfort that sends a chill through Arya, a premonition of what one must become to survive in this world. Feels. When Sebastian moves toward her, the room's entire gravitational field shifts. Men move like soldiers whose commander has just entered the field. Arya. His voice is a study in infuriating calm. He gestures to the younger man. This is Alfonso Venti. Feels. Margarita's brother. He's also your cousin. The introduction is casual, another piece of her hidden history dropped into her lap. Alfonso's eyes assess her with a cool, calculating respect. Margarita's grin is sharp, proprietary. Well, look at you. Feels. Cousin. Snagging the handsome one. The words don't register. Her mind cannot process the sudden, overwhelming expansion of this family tree she never knew she had. Feels. More family. Another cousin. Sebastian's hand on her elbow is a warm, steady anchor in the swirling chaos guiding her forward. A part of her screams to resist, to demand answers, to simply breathe. But the body obeys. Feels. She allows herself to be led toward the terrified official, a man who looks as if he is presiding over his own execution. As they stand before the makeshift altar, the official clears his throat, his hands trembling as he opens the folder. Feels. His voice cracks. He tries again. I have to ask if you are both entering into this union of your own free will without coercion or... Sebastian's answer cuts through the air, sharp and absolute. Yes. Feels. Sebastian's response was a blade through the room's suffocating tension, leaving no space for debate. He raised her hand to his mouth, and the press of his lips against her knuckles was a current that shot straight through her. Feels. His gaze was a physical weight, dark and loaded with an intensity that forced her heart out of rhythm. The official's eyes shifted to her. And you, Miss Venti? Arya swallowed against a throat gone to sand. Feels. She could feel the collective stare of every person in the room, a palpable pressure. The impulse to run was a scream in her mind, to reject it all. To list the catalog of sane, rational arguments against this moment. Instead, she anchored her voice. Feels. Making it a fortress against the storm inside. Do I truly have an alternative? The official from behind his spectacles offered only a blink of pure, unadulterated confusion. I mean, yes. Feels. The confession was like swallowing broken glass. Each word forced past the knot of terror constricting her throat. Yes, I do. The signing itself was over in a matter of minutes. A few swift signatures, a series of initials. Feels. The arid scratch of pen against paper was the only sound to sanctify the moment Arya Venti was legally erased and reborn as Arya Biano. The official gathered his documents with unsteady hands. Feels. You may collect your marriage certificate from City Hall tomorrow. He hesitated. Or His gaze flickered nervously to Luigi, who had materialized behind him, a hand resting with deliberate weight on his hip. Heels. Or I could have it delivered first thing. Sebastian's voice was arctic. That would be preferable. The official all but fled. The instant the door clicked shut, Margarita was on Arya, heels crushing her in an embrace that expelled every last bit of air from her lungs. Heels. Welcome to the family, cousin. Arya remained rigid in the embrace. A statue's mind was still buffering. Is that? She eased back slightly. Are you armed? Just a 9mm. It's nothing. Heels. Margarita dismissed the question as if discussing a brand of lipstick. I will never adjust to this. The words were a lie, and Arya knew it the moment they left her mouth. She was already acclimating to a disturbing number of absurdities. Heels. She caught Margarita's arm, guiding her away from the men who spoke in low tones by the windows. Arya lowered her voice. I was under the impression you had feelings for Sebastian. You said? Margarita's laugh cut her off. I do have a thing for Sebastian. Heels. We've been in each other's lives since we were children. A distinct softness entered her gaze. But not that kind of thing, Arya. Heels. Never that kind. She paused, and it's painfully obvious he has them for you. But the tension in Arya's shoulders had solidified into a block of granite. But what about everything you told me about him? Margarita laughed again, a louder, heels, more genuine sound this time. That, my dear, was a small assessment. Her smile broadened. And sweetheart, you couldn't conceal your jealousy for a single moment. It was written across every inch of your stunning face. A sudden, heels, scalding wave of humiliation washed over Arya. She glanced across the room to where Sebastian stood, deep in conversation with Alonso. They were all manipulating her. It was a calculated performance. And she, heels, a psychologist who built her career on interpreting human behavior, had walked directly into their snare. I need a moment alone. The words felt strained, caught in her throat. Heels. It's overwhelming. She pivoted toward the stairs, desperate for distance, for a quiet corner to process. She heard Sebastian murmur something to Alfonso behind her, but refused to look back. She couldn't. Heels. A massive oil painting commanded the second-floor landing, depicting generations of the Venti family staring out with hard, unforgiving eyes. She found herself drawn to it, her gaze sweeping across the canvas until she located her. Heels. No older than 16 in the portrait, standing slightly separate from the clan. Her dark hair was pulled into a severe braid. Her chin was lifted with an air of pure defiance. Heels. And her eyes held a feral spark not yet extinguished by years of brutal discipline. My mother was the head of the Mafia. Heels. Arya speaks the sentence aloud, simply to feel its weight on her tongue. Inherently wrong. So, that was your final little performance, wasn't it, Mom? One last secret carried to the grave. The girl in the portrait offers only a silent, heels, painted stare in return. What is our strategy? Alfonso stands near the windows with Sebastian, his posture casual, but his eyes are sharp. Sebastian merely observes the amber liquid swirling in his glass, the liquor catching the day's fading light. Heels. We wait. Alfonso's eyebrows lift fractionally. We wait to see who falters, who maintains their silence, and who makes the first desperate play. He takes a deliberate sip. We will learn who is loyal and who is a viper. Heels. And when the Lambertus finally show their hand, his expression hardens, becoming a mask of cold, calculated resolve. We will be prepared. Heels. For a moment, Alfonso simply observed him, noting the tension coiled in his shoulders. You appear calm. I was calm. Sebastian's gaze drifted upward toward the staircase where Arya had vanished. But now I have someone to lose. Heels. Someone I am compelled to protect. A flicker of something resembling empathy softened Alfonso's features. She possesses more strength than you realize. I am acutely aware of how strong she is. Sebastian's voice grew quiet, heels, laced with an entirely new strain of fear. That is precisely what concerns me. Margarita appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. Seb, what is your manpower in the basement? 6 men, with enough ordnance and equipment to challenge a small army. Heels. Margarita's thumbs moved rapidly across the screen. Heels. Excellent. I'm disseminating the news then. Informing our network that the happy couple has returned home. And then she was gone, her footsteps fading down the long corridor. Sebastian moved to the window, gazing at the sea as it bled into black. Heels. His time was contracting. Ultimately, he would either end up 6 feet under on this estate, or he would be commanding the entire bloody organization. The next few days represented the final act. Heels. He downed the remainder of his drink in a single motion and turned for the stairs. Arya was lying on the bed, wrapped in a towel, her hair still damp from the shower. The day's events were replaying in her mind, an inescapable loop. Feels the farcical wedding, Margarita's betrayal, the family portrait, her own mother's adolescent face staring back. The door swung open. Heavy footsteps crossed the room. Feels. And then Sebastian. His arrival, it's less an entrance and more an atmospheric shift, marked by the kind of deliberate power she was learning to read. He is an anatomy of contained force, each step a conscious decision. Feels. The bed yields to his weight as he sits, a silent acknowledgement of his presence. Let me see, the words are a low vibration in the room. Your face, your neck. She complies, allowing his hand to guide her chin. Feels. There is a disarming gentleness in the way his fingers map the bruise on her cheekbone, before descending to the violent purple encircling her throat. His thumb grazes her lip, and for a fleeting moment her breath hitches. I have to get something, Feels. His eyes lock on hers. I will do anything, whatever is required to ensure your safety. That you must understand is not open for discussion. The words land like shards of ice. Feels. He returned from downstairs with something frozen. The sudden cold against her skin makes her gasp as he methodically glides the ice along her neck, charting the topography of her injuries. Consider the silver lining. His entire demeanor shifts. Feels. There is at least a chemistry between us. Every one of her defenses springs to life. She meets his gaze, battling to keep her voice even. What could possibly give you the impression I am drawn to you? The journal you keep. Feels. The ice continues its cold pilgrimage over her feverish skin. You dedicated an entire page to deconstructing me. A wave of profound humiliation washes over her. She sits bolt upright, the towel clutched to her body. You searched my private things? Feels. That notebook contains confidential patient information. You had no right to do that. Feels. I only read the sections pertaining to me. His eyes held that dangerous sheen she was growing accustomed to. The rest is of no consequence. The ice slid lower, drawing a line across her collarbone. Her skin felt ignited where he touched. Feels. Her own body attempting to melt the cold. He watched her face, his focus absolute, interpreting every minute reaction. You wrote that I was dangerously compelling, that I made you feel unbalanced and drawn in against all rational judgment. Feels. His fingers slipped beneath the towel's edge, and the ice was suddenly between her breasts, a sharp jolt against her overheated skin. A sound was torn from her throat, part gasp, part moan, and entirely involuntary. Sebastian pulled her into him. Feels. His mouth descending on hers with a calculated, consuming hunger. Feels. And this time there was no resistance, no hesitation, no defensive walls. Arya kissed him back with the raw urgency of a drowning woman who had just discovered a lone pocket of air. Her fingers scrambled at the buttons of his shirt, clumsy and fumbling. Feels. Until frustration took over and she simply ripped it open. Sebastian's hand shot up to seize her wrists. His breathing was ragged. He whispered her name, Arya, as his own hands went to the towel knotted around her. With one clean, decisive tug, Feels, he let it fall. Whatever semblance of control he possessed simply disintegrated. His shirt was gone in a fluid, tearing motion, his hands immediately on her again. She climbed onto his lap. Feels. Her body molding to his, as if they were designed for this very purpose. They were lost, mouths, hands, a suffocating heat, right up until her fingers found his belt, traced lower and closed around the cold. Feels. Hard certainty of the gun holstered at the small of his back. Feels. In one fluid motion, she ripped the pistol free, pressing the cold steel directly against his temple. Sebastian didn't so much as flinch. No. Instead, a laugh rumbled from deep in his chest, a genuine, astonished laugh. Feels. As if the gun to his head was only heightening his arousal. What in God's name are you doing? He asked, a perfect blend of shock and profound admiration. Arya's voice was far more stable than she felt, sitting naked in his lap wielding his own weapon. Feels. This is the new arrangement. We are walking out of this house. You will drive me to the airport, and then you will put me on a plane back to my actual life, the one you incinerated. His grin only widened. Feels. So this is your grand exit? Forsaking your husband? The words were a casual cutting test. Some loyalty. She didn't flinch. Don't. The pressure of the gun's barrel against his skull sharpened, making the point absolute. Don't you dare mock me? Feels. And never forget whose blood runs in my veins. His gaze held hers, a silent challenge for her to follow through. And my answer is no. She offered no reply. Instead, she swiveled, aimed at the open window, and fired. A single, Feels, deafening crack that tore the night apart. Sebastian remained perfectly still, caught in pure shock. Where in God's name did you learn to handle one of those? I frequented a shooting range. It clarified my thoughts. The muzzle returned to his temple. Heels. A form of stress management. I discovered I have an aptitude for it. A laugh escaped him then, not of mockery, but of genuine, unadulterated admiration. You are undeniably your mother's daughter. And then the door was splintered from its frame. Heels. Luigi, Vince, Margarita. The entire cadre swarmed in, weapons raised, with the fluid precision of a tactical unit. Heels. Margarita absorbed the tableau in an instant. Arya, unclothed, perched on the boss's lap, a pistol pressed to his temple, the air thick with the ragged breaths of exertion. Her eyebrows ascended toward her hairline. Oh well. Heels. Apologies for interrupting this particular exercise. Luigi and Vince began a slow, deliberate retreat, their expressions carefully neutral. The situation is contained, Sebastian stated, his focus never wavering from Arya's face. All of you. Heels. Withdraw. Arya's hand remained impossibly steady on the weapon. My husband and I require privacy. Leave. Margarita's professional veneer dissolved into sheer amusement. Understood, of course. Take all the time you need. She slipped out. Heels. Pulling the door closed behind her. The silence that descended was heavy, charged with a potent energy. Arya's chest rose and fell, her body humming with adrenaline, and something far more primal. Heels. Sebastian's gaze fell to her chest, tracing the rhythm of her agitated breathing. You have no comprehension of the effect you're having on me right now, do you? She managed to force the words out, breathless yet unyielding. Heels. And you have no idea of my resolve? The gun found its mark again. This is what happens. We are leaving. Tonight, you will personally escort me to the airport. Her stare was an inferno. Now give me the towel. He held her gaze for a beat. Heels. His hand moving toward it with calculated slowness. His fingers brushed the fabric, but instead of surrendering it, he moved like lightning. One hand deflected the weapon as the other flipped her onto her back in a single, fluid act of violence. Heels. She was immobilized, wrists captured above her head in one of his fists, while his other hand dispassionately ejected the magazine and cleared the firearms chamber. Heels. The gun clattered to the floor, now a useless piece of metal. First principle, when you hold a person at gunpoint. His body was a crushing weight upon hers, a solid mass of muscle, heat, and raw control. Never allow yourself to be distracted. Heels. Her struggles were pointless, an exercise in futility. He held her with unnerving ease. Release me. Just listen. A hard, unfamiliar edge entered his voice. Even if I drove you to that airport, even if I placed you on a flight to Detroit, Heels, your identity is now known. They are aware of your father's daughter, and they will come for you. His eyes forced her to confront the brutal logic of her situation. You believe the Lambertus will simply let you vanish? Heels. You imagine for a second they won't use you as leverage against me, against my family? A profound chill permeated her very bones. Your strategy was flawed from its inception. Heels. He increased the pressure on her wrists. Placing your trust in me is the only viable path forward. Your mother did. I remained loyal to her until her final breath. I swear to you I will be loyal to you for the remainder of my life. And with that, Heels. Arya's resistance ceased. Her body went slack beneath him, and why had she been fighting it? She'd been consumed by this man from the moment she first saw him. She was drawn to the arrogance, the aura of danger. Heels. She craved the way his gaze fell on her, as if she were the only woman alive. She had filled journals analyzing him, trying to rationalize away the pull, but what she felt was an elemental force, impervious to logic. Reaching up, she guided his mouth to hers. Heels. Not a feint like before, not a distraction. Heels. This was an act of pure volition, a raw, unguarded confession of need. A groan was torn from his throat as his self-control shattered into 1,000 pieces. He released her wrists, his hands tangling in her hair, mapping the contours of her body. Heels. Touching her as if he'd been starving for the opportunity for weeks. She was at his belt, his zipper pulling him closer, demanding every part of him. When their clothes joined hers on the floor, she wrapped herself around him, drawing him inside. Heels. This time, as he entered her, there was no resistance, no hesitation. Only acceptance, and when he filled her, the sensation was so profound it stole her breath. It felt like a homecoming, like completion, a feeling so right it was utterly terrifying. Heels. I need you, Arya. Heels. His words were a fractured whisper against her skin. I need you by my side. I need you to be mine. She was incapable of speech, incapable of thought. Her body provided the answer instead. In her movements against him, in the sounds that escaped her, Heels, in the way her nails scored his shoulders. Something foundational within her was breaking apart. A central tenet of her constructed self simply gave way. The cautious psychologist, the woman who deconstructed every detail, heals, who lived behind fortifications of control, she was gone. In her place was a woman who embraced risk, a woman who felt without reservation, a woman who chose desire over security. Perhaps this was it. The Venti bloodline finally asserting itself, heals, the legacy her mother fought to suppress. Or perhaps this was simply Arya, finally allowing herself to be at last devastatingly alive. Heals. The moment she climaxed around him, his name a raw cry on her lips, she felt the last of her internal architecture dissolve into dust. When he followed moments later, his face buried in the curve of her neck, a new certainty settled over her. Heals. Nothing would ever be the same. They lay in the aftermath, neither willing to break the spell. His hand traced idle patterns across her back. Stay with me. It was not a command. It was a supplication. It was perhaps a plea. Heals. Arya responded not with words, but with a kiss to his jaw, his throat, letting her body communicate what he needed to know. Outside, the ocean crashed against the cliffs. Elsewhere in the house, armed men stood vigil. And in the wider world, heals, enemies were scheming, a storm was gathering. Heals. Yet in that moment, enveloped in Sebastian's arms, Arya discovered something she had never thought to seek. It was not his power, it was her own. Her entire existence had been a study in caution, in making herself small, heals, in a desperate attempt to not become her mother. But what if safety had never been the objective? What if the objective was power? And what if, just perhaps, she had found the one place where she was always meant to be? Arya awoke to a profound warmth, heals, a solid chest beneath her cheek, strong arms holding her in a way that felt predestined. Sebastian's breathing was deep and even. He was still asleep. She attempted to slip away, to escape before he stirred. But his arms tightened instantly, heals, pulling her back against him. His voice was a low, sleep-ruined growl. Heals. You weren't truly considering an exit on our first morning together, were you? It was a statement of fact, not a question. His hands began to move, a slow and deliberate rediscovery of the territory he had claimed hours before. Heals. When she finally met his gaze, his eyes held an emotion that made her heart seize. Desire was there, yes, but beneath it lay something else softer. It was love. The word struck her with the force of a physical blow. Heals. She had never been the target of such a look, never permitted herself to imagine she ever would be. His mouth found hers, insistent and possessive, and she was already yielding to him when the knock came. Sharp, insistent. Boss! Heals. Vince's voice sliced through the door. Large yacht just dropped anchor offshore. Sebastian went absolutely still. Heals. The intimacy between them evaporated, replaced by something arctic and hard. He was out of the bed, pulling on pants and a shirt with a lethal economy of motion. The pistol was suddenly at the small of his back as if it were a part of him, heals, as natural as an inhalation. Arya rushed to the window. Peering out, she saw it, a sleek white yacht, anchored a quarter-mile out, looking serene in the morning sun. It could be nothing. People anchor here occasionally. I don't operate on could-be, heals. Sebastian was beside her, a palpable tension radiating from him. This is a private inlet. If they're here and not near the main harbor, his eyes swept over the vessel with a predator's intensity. They could be precisely who we've been anticipating, heals. The marriage announcement was released yesterday. Their response time is impressive. That familiar icy dread began to seep back into Arya's veins. You believe it's them? The Lamberts? He didn't reply, striding instead toward the main room, heals. The space had been transformed into an operational command center. Margarita stood at the window, binoculars fixed to her eyes, her relaxed morning demeanor replaced with razor-edged concentration. It must be the Lambertus, heals. She didn't lower the optics. No one else would have the appalling taste to wear black suits on a luxury yacht in this climate. Amateurs, utterly without class. Alfonso emerged from the armory, slamming a fresh magazine into his sidearm, heals. We could dispatch a fishing boat, conduct a closer reconnaissance. No. Sebastian took the binoculars from Margarita, examining the yacht for himself. Heals. The warmth evaporated from his expression, leaving behind the cold calculus of a predator.
We do nothing. Absolutely nothing.
This is the first lesson in Sebastian's theater of war, and for Alfonso, it is a confounding one. Heals. The enemy will not advance until nightfall. They are observers for now, spectators counting heads. Lowering his binoculars, Sebastian outlines the strategy. They must project weakness, an illusion of blissful ignorance. Heals. We have to make them think we're an easy target, he explains, his gaze sweeping the room. Let them get comfortable. The enemy must be lured in by the belief that every advantage is theirs. Margarita's face mirrors his cold resolve. Feels. So we put on a show. Exactly. Sebastian then turns to her and Arya. Get your swimsuits. We're spending the morning by the water. For Arya and Margarita, a shared glance communicates everything. Feels. Just another day inside the Venti family's surreal reality. Feels. And so the performance begins. 30 minutes later, Arya is seated on a stone dock beside Margarita, their feet breaking the water's surface while a small motorboat rocks gently beside them. The sun feels deceptively real, warm on her shoulders. Feels. The ocean, a glittering expanse, seems to beckon. But somewhere across that beautiful tableau, men are watching through the crosshairs of a rifle. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. Then Sebastian appears, clad only in swim trunks. Feels. He is a living map of lean muscle and controlled violence. He doesn't pause, he simply cuts cleanly into the water. Try not to stare at the yacht, Margarita murmurs, her voice low as she sips a bubbly orange drink. Feels a color far too cheerful for the gravity of their circumstance. Feels. The danger isn't here just yet. We should enjoy this while we can. But Arya's attention is fixed on the water where Sebastian vanished. He is under for too long. A familiar hum of anxiety begins to build inside her. Feels. Right before he breaks the surface near the motorboat's hull, his hands manipulating something just below the waterline. What is he doing? Margarita simply swirls her drink, the picture of serene indifference. Planting charges. C4, probably. Feels. Seeks if we're running low on the good stuff. The line is delivered with such profound normalcy, such casual expertise that Arya's mind momentarily stalls. Then the implication detonates. He's what? Sebastian is always prepared. Feels. Margarita tilts her head back, absorbing the sun. He has backup plans for his backup plans. Arya's gaze flicks across the bay, landing on a zodiac raft hidden near the boathouse. Feels. What's that for? Margarita offers another dismissive shrug. Our exit strategy. Told you. He's prepared. In one fluid motion, Sebastian surfaces, hauling himself onto the dock as water streams from his torso. He moves directly to Arya. Feels. Leaning in to kiss her before she can form a single thought. You are not blowing up my cottage. She intends it as a command, it intends as a plea. His lips are still on hers. I'll buy you a better one, bigger, anywhere you want in the world. Feels. Arya just shakes her head, the sheer, crushing weight of this new life finally settling upon her. 2 weeks ago, I had a normal life. It might have been boring, but it was normal. Her eyes drift to Margarita. Feels. Already pouring another drink before the clock has even struck 11 a.m. Feels. What about her, drinking Aperol at 11 in the morning? Margarita simply raises her glass, a portrait of defiant indulgence. Sweetheart, it's a Venti family thing. She then recites the day's liquid itinerary. Cocktails at 11 a.m., wine with lunch. Feels. Harder spirits in the afternoon, tequila at dinner, and a whiskey nightcap. She takes a deep swallow. Get used to it. Arya's objection is feeble, even to her own ears. A part of her is already becoming harder, colder. Feels. But before that thought can fully crystallize, strong arms seize her from behind. It is Sebastian, lifting her as if she weighs nothing at all. Feels. What are you doing? But his eyes have that feral intensity she is becoming dangerously accustomed to. Something I've wanted to do since the second I saw you. With that, he launches them from the dock, pulling her down into the water with him. Feels. They come up sputtering, her shock dissolving into incredulous laughter. In that moment, the yacht, the gunmen, the explosives, the entire inferno that has consumed her life in 14 days, all of it recedes. Feels. Sebastian's hands find her waist beneath the surface, pulling her body flush against his. Ever tell you about the hidden cove? He growls. Biting her lip to suppress a smile, Arya replies, Yeah, you might have mentioned it. His grin becomes predatory. Feels. Did I mention what I'm going to do to you there? The playful energy evaporates as she clamps a hand over his mouth. Feels. Just promise me we get out of tonight alive. He turns his head to kiss her palm, his green eyes burning in the sunlight. All pretense is gone, replaced by a terrifying, absolute certainty. I will never let anyone hurt you, Bella. Not them. Never. Feels. His grip on her waist tightens, shifting from an embrace to an act of possession. I swear it. Across the water, the enemy yacht sits, a vessel of silent menace. Beneath their own boat, explosives wait. In the house, weapons are being readied. Yet here, Feels, in his arms, she allows herself to believe in the impossible. Feels. She has no other choice. The alternative is a void she cannot contemplate. As the sun finally bleeds below the horizon, painting the sky in violent hues, the cottage glows like a beacon. Feels. The dinner scene is pure stagecraft, cold pasta and half-empty wine glasses arranged for an unseen audience. At the head of the table, Sebastian speaks into a phone, his voice a low, steady current of commands. Margarita swirls her wine, heals, a study in practiced calm, wholly ignoring the private war mobilizing just beyond the walls. Felt like I was acting all day, she muses with a dangerous glint in her eye. Honestly, one of the best days I've had in a while. Heals. Sebastian's focus remains unbroken. Heals. Luigi, you in position downstairs? A beat. Good. Get the boat to the backup cove in the next hour. Kill the lights. Got it. From the far end of the table, Arya simply observes him. 2 weeks, just 14 days ago. Heals. This man was an arrogant stranger with an attractive face and a threatening aura. Now he was her husband. The word itself feels foreign, ill-fitting. Heals. She fights the undeniable pull he exudes in his element, that quiet authority that commands absolute obedience, the visible sense that he is engaged in a game of chess while all others are merely moving checkers. No, nothing at all like her father. Feels. But her mother, Arya's focused fulfillment, her gaze lost to the dark water as years of psychological training take over. The mind defaults to what is familiar, not because it is safe, but because the pathways are already carved. Feels. She had built a career studying these very patterns, and yet she walked into this trap with her eyes wide open. How else could this have happened? The truth lands with the force of a physical blow. It is solid, undeniable, and she is tired of fighting it. Feels. Sebastian. It is Alonso, his voice cutting through the quiet from the doorway. 2 cars we don't recognize just left town, heading our way, and the yacht just dropped a speedboat in the water. Feels. Sebastian is on his feet instantly, his body a tightly coiled spring, yet his movements remain utterly fluid. A glance at the clock, 9 p.m. They'll have us surrounded within the hour. The main assault will hit around 11. His gaze sweeps the room. Feels. A commander assessing his field. Margarita, Vince, Luigi. You're the decoys. Everyone else stays out of sight. They can't know our real numbers. Nods of understanding circle the room. The unit knows the plan. Then Sebastian turns to Arya, heals, extending his hand palm up. An invitation, not a command. Come with me. The bedroom feels claustrophobic with their combined presence. After closing the door, Sebastian crosses to her and frames her face with his hands. Heals. For a man about to orchestrate a battle, his touch is profoundly gentle. Heals. The kiss is soft, tender. It feels entirely out of place in this moment. What was that for? Her voice is a thin wire, ready to snap. In 2 hours, this place is going to be swarming with killers. How are you so calm? Heals. He pulls her down onto the bed so they are face to face. His thumb traces the line of her cheek with a care that is almost painful. If this was all the time we had left, he asks, his gaze unyielding, would you want to spend it freaking out or like this? Heals. Arya shoves at his chest and sits up. We have known each other for 2 weeks. Don't you dare tell me you're in love with me. Sebastian merely props himself on an elbow, those green eyes seeming to peel back every layer of her defenses. Heals. How long is a person supposed to take to fall in love? Tell me, psychologist. What's the official data say? She opens her mouth to rebut, but no words come. He knows it. The second you fell into my lap and looked up at me with those eyes. Heals. His voice lowers to a murmur. I knew I was going to be with you, that this was it. Because you planned it. She retorts, the word sharp with accusation. No. He captures her hand, pressing it firmly against the hard wall of his chest. Heals. His heart thunders against her palm, a rhythm too fast, too strong to be faked. This was never a plan. It's this, just this. He covers her hand with his, holding it in place. Sometimes a few seconds is all it takes. Heals. His claim settles in her chest like an anchor. Why me? The question escapes before she can contain it, a raw, vulnerable sound that betrays every defense she has ever built. Why would you fall for me? A faint smile touches his lips, softer this time. Heals. You're looking for the textbook answer, right? I bet you've got one already. He eliminates the final space between them. But let me tell you what I actually see. His fingers trace her jawline with an impossible lightness. Heals. That distance in your eyes, like you're mapping every escape route, even when you're dying to stay. He brushes a stray piece of hair from her cheek. I see how you give me your body, then snatch your soul right back to stay in control. Heals. It's that beautiful, maddening contradiction. Heals. The scene opens not with action, but with a psychological dissection. He observes her inability to breathe, framing it as the body's involuntary confession. His words become a scalpel. Heals. Peeling back layers of a meticulously constructed professional identity. You warn me to keep my distance, he says, articulating the central paradox of her existence. It is here we see the psychologist, a master of analyzing others, Heals. rendered completely transparent, her own defenses systematically dismantled. He doesn't see the persona. He sees the vulnerability you try to hide, the fire she attempts to suppress. In this moment, heals. The narrative posits that true intimacy is not a meeting of equals, but an act of profound, almost unnerving perception, where one person finally understands the other better than they understand themselves. Heals. A single tear is presented as the ultimate betrayal of her facade, a fissure in the dam. His response is not one of sympathy but of convergence, pressing his forehead to hers in a gesture of shared intimacy. The subsequent kiss is framed as an inquiry, heals, a tender exploration that shifts into a demand. The power dynamic subtly changes. His hands, which first held her face as if she were priceless, become instruments of mapping and possession. His question, "What is this?" heals, is not merely a plea for emotional clarity. It is a raw assertion of need. The scene illustrates a classic trope of masculine pursuit, the necessity for verbal confirmation, the desire to hear the feeling articulated, heals, to capture the ephemeral emotion and make it concrete, heals. His plea transcends the physical, escalating into a demand for spiritual communion. It's not just your body I need your soul stripped bare. This is the language of absolutism, where love is equated with a form of worshipful possession, heals. The setting reinforces this, moonlight painting them in stark silver and black, a visual metaphor for the bearing of truths. Her surrender is therefore twofold. First, the physical act of pulling him down, and second, heals. The verbal capitulation with words that she admits have terrified her. "I love you" becomes less a declaration and more an oath of fealty, the final wall crumbling as she looks him in the eye, validating the confession not just with sound, heals, but with sight, heals. The consummation of their bond is depicted as an event that erases the world, a temporary pocket of existence outside of time and consequence. His gaze never breaks from hers, heals, suggesting an intimacy so profound that all external defenses are rendered meaningless. His whispered "I love you" is the catalyst that shatters his own control, mirroring her earlier surrender. They become a tangle of limbs, heals, a symbol of two entities fused into one, indivisible. But the narrative immediately juxtaposes this sanctuary with the encroaching reality. Armed men awaiting yacht, the machinery of violence is already in motion. For this brief interlude, however, heals, they have achieved a state of being so pure that it is positioned as the one thing actually worth dying for, heals. The sanctity of the moment is shattered by a percussive intrusion, a hammering on the door. Reality reasserts itself. For a fleeting instant, Arya experiences the feeling of safety against his chest, heals, a sensation the narrator likens to the deep breath before the tidal wave hits. Margarita enters not as a person, but as a function, the messenger of chaos. Her words, "They're here, Seb," act as a trigger, heals, instantly dissolving the intimacy into frantic survival. The fumbling with zippers and buttons underscores the jarring transition from lover to fugitive. His grip, which will definitely leave a bruise, is a potent symbol of how, in their world, heals, even acts of protection are tinged with the very violence they are fleeing, heals. The descent into the bunker is a literal journey into the underworld, the concrete foundation of the family's power. Here, the sterile architecture of a military-grade bunker clashes with Arya's dawning comprehension of her own lineage, heals. The racks of guns are not just weapons, they are artifacts of a secret history. The realization that her mother inhabited this world forces Arya to confront the vast unknown spaces in her own identity, heals. This is a moment of profound psychological dislocation. As soldiers move with tactical precision, Sebastian's calm command demonstrates his seamless integration into this violent order, heals, highlighting the chasm that is opened between his world and the one Arya thought she knew, heals. Here, the narrative explores the conflict between personal attachment and codified duty. Sebastian's decision to stand with my men is an adherence to a deeply ingrained masculine archetype of leadership within the syndicate, heals. The leader does not flee. Arya's protest, "You are not staying here," is a desperate attempt to impose a different value system, one where the individual bond supersedes the collective obligation, but her agency is nullified. Margarita's hand, heals, gentle but firm, is the physical embodiment of the established order, a matriarchal enforcement of the patriarchal code. "They always come back," she says, a statement of faith in the system's resilience and its men, heals. The final kiss is a desperate, condensed promise against a ticking clock. 1 hour, he says, a verbal contract that must sustain her through the coming chaos. With his departure, he fully re-inhabits his role as a commander. Feels. Moving toward the mechanisms of destruction. A hidden panel, a bomb left in waiting. The cottage is revealed not as a home but as a fortress, a testament to the perpetual state of paranoia that defines their lives. Arya, meanwhile, is pulled away. Feels. Her body turned into a passive object of protection. Her silent prayer is a fragile appeal to a higher power, a hope that their personal story will not be consumed by the larger narrative of violence that has just erupted. Feels. A split perspective contrasts two modes of survival. Sebastian's is defined by proactive violence and clear intent. He sets the 40-minute timer, arms himself, and is driven by the singular thought of returning to her. Feels. His is a fight against external forces. Arya's struggle, however, is internal. The dark tunnel becomes a psychological landscape, a physical manifestation of her fear and guilt. Feels. The feeling that abandoning him is soul-deep wrong reveals a moral crisis. She is running to save her life, yet this act of self-preservation feels like a fundamental betrayal of the connection they just solidified. Feels. The dialogue in the tunnel becomes a study in verbal misdirection. Luigi's assurance, "My only job is to get you to the boat in one piece," is laden with dramatic irony. He separates their party under a guise of tactical logic. Feels. Creating a fatal isolation. Margarita's distant, questioning shouts from ahead create an auditory sense of separation and growing dread. Her eventual fainter reply, "You damn well better be right behind us," is the last echo of their unified plan. Feels. It signals her own burgeoning suspicion, a feeling Arya already senses, a fracture in the loyalty she thought was absolute. Feels. The physical journey through the tunnel mirrors Arya's psychological disorientation. Luigi deliberately leads her off the established path, deeper into a trap. The sound of the ocean, typically a symbol of escape, becomes an omen. Feels. The reveal is a masterful subversion of sanctuary, emerge at her own cottage, a place of supposed safety now reframed as the final destination of a betrayal. Feels. The knot of pure wrongness in her stomach is the intuitive mind recognizing the horrifying truth before the conscious brain can process the visual evidence. Home has become the terminus of the threat. Feels. The moment of betrayal is stark and unequivocal. Luigi's pistol, aimed at her chest, is the physical punctuation to his verbal declaration. The firefight in the distance provides a chaotic soundtrack to this intimate act of treason. Feels. His apology is chilling in its dispassion, framing a violent coup in the language of business. The Ventus are out. His words reposition Arya and Sebastian not as people but as disruptions to a familial and criminal enterprise. Feels. They were never truly family. They were a variable that threatened the established order. Feels. Luigi's monologue exposes the core conflict. He is not a simple villain, but a conservator of a system. Sebastian, he argues, represents a revolutionary force who will burn everything to the ground. Fear of this change, Feels, of the destruction of their deals and network, is his prime motivation. Even in this moment of extreme peril, Arya's analytical mind attempts to map the new political landscape, questioning his allegiance. Feels. The muzzle flashes from the main house serve as a constant, violent reminder of the stakes. Feels. Her final question about Sebastian and the others is a desperate appeal to a shared identity. Their Venturo, a loyalty that Luigi's actions have just rendered meaningless. Feels. For an instant, Arya witnessed what might have been regret flicker across Luigi's features. "You're not one of us," she stumbled back, the sound of her boot grating on stone. Behind her lay the dock and the cottage, two dark and forgotten structures. Feels. The Mediterranean was a vast expanse of black, its surface alive with the shimmering reflection of fire. Then, reality itself seemed to fracture. The detonation at the main house sent a physical shockwave through the ground. Feels. A tremor that traveled up her spine. Stone, wood, and memory itself erupted into a colossal pillar of flame. A wave of oppressive heat washed over her, even at this distance. "Sebastian, did you get out?" The thought was a vice around her heart. Feels. Squeezing the very air from her lungs. "This isn't personal, Arya." Luigi's voice sliced through the inferno's roar. "I'm sorry." The gun discharged. The impact of the projectile threw her backward into the consuming darkness. Feels. The pain was still a distant concept. There was only the shock, a psychic numbness where agony would soon reside. Her body understood its violation long before her mind could process the fact of being shot. Feels. Her final sight was of the Venti house consumed by fire, its architecture surrendering into a heap of orange and red embers. Her final sensation was the phantom touch of Sebastian's lips on hers. Feels. She struck the water flat on her back, the very same water where she had shared laughter with him that morning. The cold was an absolute, a void that swallowed her whole. Salt water stung her eyes, her lips. Is this the finality? Yills. She had only just begun to unearth the pieces of herself she had long kept buried. She had learned finally to cease apologizing for her own existence. Yills. She had found someone who saw her, the authentic her, and a past whose shape she was just starting to grasp. Now all of it was being violently undone. Yills. She was being removed from the game before she had even learned its rules. Yills. As the dark water pulled her down, her mind became a theater of memories. Sebastian's green eyes, the feel of his hands framing her face, the way he regarded her as if she were the single point of stability in the universe. 2 weeks. Yills. That was the entirety of it. A strange thing that these would be her final thoughts, not her music, not her career, not the life she so carefully constructed. Only him. Only those 2 cataclysmic weeks. The cold was a weight now, Yills, dragging her toward the abyss as pressure mounted in her chest. The will to fight had been extinguished. Her eyes fluttered closed, and then there was only silence. A final shroud settling over her as she sank deeper and deeper into the black. Yills. The pressure was a physical force on her eyes, her lungs, her eardrums. The cold had transcended sensation, becoming a profound and terminal numbness. Arya's body felt like a problem belonging to someone else. Her eyes drifted shut. But then impact. Yills. An arm, appearing from nowhere, encircled her waist. She was yanked against a solid form, which began a powerful ascent toward the surface. The grip was like iron, a silent vow not to release her, hauling her back toward a world she had already conceded. Yills. Arya's eyes opened, green. A pair of green eyes met hers in the aquatic gloom. She recognized those eyes. Of course she did. She had committed every shade of them to memory, Sebastian. His expression was one of pure, undiluted focus. Yills. His dark hair a halo around his head. One arm was a vice around her waist. The other propelled them through the water with the force of a turbine. Yills. His legs were an engine, rocketing them both toward the surface. He had not perished in the inferno. He was here, was real. They breached the surface together, exploding into the night air. Arya's first breath was a ragged, Yills. Brutal gasp of salt and oxygen, igniting a fire in her lungs. A scream tore from her shoulder. She was expelling seawater, a desperate battle between purging the ocean and inhaling the air. Sebastian, she couldn't draw a full breath. Yills. Her thoughts were a chaotic storm. I thought you were gone. The house, Luigi shot me. He was one of them. Breathe. Sebastian held her fast, treading water with ease. His voice, a steady anchor in the turmoil, cut through her panic. Yills. I am here. Everything unfolded exactly as we planned. Just breathe, Bella. Her world was a vortex of confusion. Turning in his embrace, she surveyed the absolute devastation. In the distance, the main house was a funeral pyre. Yills. Its flames reaching for a starless sky. Further out, the Lamberti yacht was also burning, listing severely as it succumbed to the sea. Sebastian guided her toward a nearby floating object. A small black zodiac raft. Yills. He lifted her inside before following, gently laying her down. Am I dying? The question was a small childlike whisper, a twitch at Sebastian's lips. Not the arrogant smirk she remembered. This was something else, softer. No love. Yills. He shot you with a blank. No projectile, but the charge can still burn you at close range. It's going to hurt like hell for a few days, but you are not dying. He pushed aside her jacket, his gaze fixed on her shoulder. The fabric was scorched, Yills, and the skin beneath was an angry, vivid red. A shallow graze marked the muscle, its edges already blooming with a dark bruise. See? He touched the wound with an almost impossible gentleness. Grazed you, bruised you. It'll be sore for a while. Yills. But you're okay. Arya could only stare, her mind unable to assemble the pieces. None of it was computing. What is happening, Sebastian? I don't understand any of this. He pulled the starter cord on the outboard motor. The engine coughed, Yills, then roared to life. I couldn't pull you into this life, Bella. His voice was raw, almost lost in the engine's noise. Yills. I love you too much to watch you burn, so I'm sending you home. But for this to be permanent, everyone has to believe you are dead. The raft gained speed, carving a path through the black water. Once they were clear of the smoldering cottage, Yills. Sebastian produced a small remote detonator. He pressed the button. The small motorboat, still moored to the dock, simply ceased to exist in a flash of light. A massive orange blossom bloomed in the night as shrapnel rained down. Yills. Arya watched the Venti house burn, watched the yacht sink, watched the boat she arrived on become vapor. Each image was a brand seared onto her consciousness. Sebastian steered them toward an entirely different cove. feels. As they cut through the darkness, he began to deconstruct the night's events. The plan was altered at the last moment. He kept his gaze fixed on the water ahead. Only Luigi and I knew. Everyone else, Margarita, Alfonso, Vince, feels. Every single one of them, they must believe you are gone. Even them. The fewer people who know the truth, the safer you will be. Arya's mind worked in slow motion, attempting to forge connections between these disparate facts. Why? Feels. Digo's people were watching, so were the Lambertists. Sebastian's jaw tightened. They saw Luigi shoot you. They saw you enter the water. They believe he is with them now, which allows him to operate for me from the inside. The cold, feels hard logic of the strategy finally began to crystallize. Feels. You're positioning him as an undercover operative. He is already in place. The two men who escaped tonight, I allowed them to get away. They will report that the Ventus are annihilated, that you are dead, and that Luigi has switched his allegiance. Feels. Sebastian finally turned to look at her. And while that narrative solidifies, you will vanish. A new identity, a new life, safe. A surge of rage sliced through her shock. Her hands clenched into fists. How could you not tell me? Feels. Her voice was sharper than she intended. I thought I was dying, Sebastian, I thought. Her throat constricted. You let me believe I was going to die. His expression hardened, but he refused to look away from the water. If you had known, Feels, your reaction would not have been convincing. Diego's men were watching. Feels. They needed to witness authentic fear. They needed to witness an authentic death. His voice lowered. I am sorry, Bella, but it had to appear real. Arya blinked, trying to will the world into focus. So what happens now? Feels. She observed his rigid profile against the darkness. What will you do? Sebastian turned toward the shore where the silhouette of a car waited in the shadows. Now, Bella, as a man who has returned from the grave, Feels. I have given Diego and the Lambertus reason to reconsider ever crossing me again. Of all the assassins they sent, only 2 survived, and only by my permission. He looked back at her. I have placed Luigi precisely where he needs to be, Feels. I have ensured your safety now. I returned to work, back to Sicily, back to my life. The Zodiac's engine cut out as they reached the shore, and then Arya heard it, the unmistakable thumping rhythm of a helicopter. Feels. Sebastian's face became a mask of stone. Now I go back to my life. The words struck her with the force of a physical blow, followed by something sharper, absolute disbelief. She could only stare at him, her expression a canvas of raw betrayal. Feels. What about us? A shadow moved across his features. His throat worked as he swallowed. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, deliberate. Love is about sacrifice, is it not? His eyes seemed to contain a universe of pain. Feels. I must let you go to ensure your safety. It is the most difficult thing I have ever had to do. The raft scraped against the rocks. Sebastian was out in an instant, pulling the craft to shore. The helicopter was 30 yards away, its rotors spinning, Feels poised for a rapid departure. He nodded toward it. Feels. 20 minutes to the airport. He then reached into a waterproof bag stowed in the Zodiac and produced a passport sheathed in plastic. Your name is Bella Doretti, Italian-American. There is 50 million in an account under that name. Feels. Pure fury flashed across her face. Her hands trembled as she took the document. I don't want your money. It isn't mine. His eyes locked with hers. It is yours. From the house. From your mother. Aura would have wanted you to have it. Feels. She would have wanted you free of this life. Safe. With the opportunity to build any future you desired. Tears began to obscure her vision. She blinked them away, furious with herself for the weakness. So you had it all arranged. Every last detail. Feels. Her composure finally shatters. Did you ever love me, or was I simply another pawn in your grand strategy? Sebastian's expression fractures. In a single fluid motion, he pulls her against him. The kiss a brutal, desperate act. Feels. As if he's trying to sear her taste into his soul permanently. When he breaks away, his own eyes are shining with unshed tears. If I didn't love you this much, his voice falters. If my love were any less, you'd be on a plane to Sicily with me this instant. Feels. But this is how much I love you, and it means I cannot let you be consumed by the fire. I should have been given a choice. Arya's hands are fisted in his jacket, holding on even as she understands it is the end. This is not your decision alone, Feels. You don't get to just, because this time you would have chosen with your heart. Feels. His touch becomes the embodiment of his entire strategy, simultaneously gentle and final as he unclasps her hands from his shirt. In this moment, he assumes the mantle of protector through the act of severance. Feels. It is the brutal calculus of a man who understands that to save her, he must first utterly destroy her world, and by extension, himself. Near the waiting helicopter, a figure begins to approach, heels, a silhouette, moving against the violent churn of the rotor blades. Miss Adretti, we have to go. The name hangs in the air, a foreign sound. She is no longer Ariventi. In the span of 2 chaotic weeks, heels, she had dismantled a lifetime of fabricated identity, only to find her truest self, a woman who unearthed her mother's story, discovered her own power, and connected with a man who saw past every one of her defenses, heels. And now, with that same clarity, he exiles her back into a world of artifice, alone, bearing a name that feels like a costume. Sebastian retreats, and the gap of dark water between them widens into a chasm, a physical manifestation of their new reality, heels. Sebastian, you need to leave. His voice is a raw, afraid thing. Please, Bella, don't make this any harder. An argument dies in her throat. She feels the urge to fight, to scream, to refuse to move, but his gaze holds a terrible, unwavering certainty, heels. She sees the unassailable logic in his eyes. The choice was made long ago. He had already set her adrift, and the most devastating realization of all was that she understood why. She forces herself from the raft, heels, her legs unsteady on the slick rocks as the uniformed man approaches, his presence clinical and detached, heels. The man repeats his instruction, Miss Adoretti, it's time to leave. Her gaze finds Sebastian one last time, a statue in the pitching boat. The inferno of the Venti estate illuminates one side of his face in a flickering, hellish orange, heels, while the other remains cloaked in shadow. He is a figure carved from fire and darkness, beautiful, inaccessible, a memory before he is even gone. I'm never going to see you again, am I? The question is a raw nerve, heels. What breaks on his face is not a smile or a smirk, but something more fundamental, something that simply shatters. I love you, Ara. It does not answer her question. It is a eulogy, a definitive final declaration, heels. A profound pain sears through her as she turns toward the helicopter, each step an act of self-vivisection. The ground shifts from sand to stone to the cold, unforgiving metal of the aircraft's step. Anonymous, heels. Efficient hands guide her inside as she struggles with the seatbelt, her fingers feeling distant and numb, heels. The crescendo of the rotors became a physical force. As the helicopter clawed its way into the sky, Arya rested her face to the vibrating glass, her breath instantly clouding the view. Below on the shoreline, Sebastian stood, his head tilted back, heels, a solitary figure tracking her ascent into the blackness. There was no wave, no gesture. He remained a statue, hands inert at his sides, as the distance between them became a chasm. His features dissolved into an impressionistic blur, heels, the inferno of the house reduced to a dying ember. 2 weeks of beautiful, terrible intimacy contracted into a single point of light on the coast, and then darkness consumed it. She squeezed her eyes shut, a futile gesture, heels. The image was already etched into her psyche. Sebastian, watching her departure from a shore of ash, the ruins of what they had built, what was taken, and what could now never be, heels. That final tableau became her personal ghost. For an entire year, she would see him there on that shore in the moments before sleep. Every single night, she would relive the sensation of being released by the man she loved, heels. Arya Ellis re-entered the United States carrying an Italian passport in the name of Bella Doretti and a driver's license bearing her own. 2 identities inhabiting one body, both feeling equally fraudulent. A full year, heels. 12 months had passed since she had moved through customs at Detroit Metro, her heart a frantic drum, certain that any moment a hand would fall on her shoulder, that questions would be asked for which she had no answers, heels, exposing the surreal fortnight she'd lived in a place that now felt less like a memory and more like a fever dream. But no one did, heels. No one inquired at all, and in the long year that followed, no one called. Not Sebastian, not Margarita or Alonso. The void was absolute, no calls, no emails, not a single message to break the suffocating silence, heels. Italy began to feel like a fiction she had constructed, a grim fairy tale. The stone house in Scario, the garden path where she'd nearly fallen, the man with green eyes who had been there to steady her. It was all dissolving into a hazy, heels, manufactured past, all except one detail. Her nightly ritual, performed just before succumbing to exhaustion. She would close her eyes and summon the feeling again. Sebastian's mouth on hers, his hands cupping her face. That last kiss on the beach, heels as the helicopter blades beat the air and the taste of salt spray mingled on their lips, heels. It was the taste of the ocean and of pure, uncut desperation. She recalled how his fingers had woven into her damp hair, as if trying to commit the texture to memory, and it was a source of pain, a consistent, sharp agony, heels. It was a wound she consciously refused to let heal, reopening it each night. But the compulsion was unbreakable. 5 months after her return, she founded her own therapy practice. The clinic was situated in downtown Detroit, 10 stories up, hills, with panoramic windows that surveyed the city of her birth, her city, the one she had returned to reclaim. Her patients would unburden themselves, their narratives filled with betrayals and breakups, with love that had soured or simply evaporated, feels. And she would listen, her professional mask firmly in place, taking notes and posing clinical questions, while each of their stories only served to hollow out the emptiness inside her. Feels. That evening, Arya was at her desk, observing the sunset spill across the Detroit skyline. One last session. She rolled her shoulders, a small effort against the chronic tension that had taken up residence there. Her mind drifted, as it so often did, feels, back to that first afternoon in Scario. The garden, the stumble, his eyes finding hers. She whispered into the silent office, her voice a fragile sound against the city's low hum. Arya, it was a dream. You must stop inhabiting a dream. Feels. Her intercom buzzed to life. Dr. Ellis, came Pam's bright voice. Your final patient is here, a Mr. Benedict. Arya reached for her notebook and turned to a clean page, pen poised, the professional facade sliding perfectly back into place. Feels. A brief hesitation. Feels. Pam's voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper, a tone reserved for exceptionally attractive clients. Nicholas Benedict, 37, and he dresses impeccably. Another moment of silence. He listed grief and loss as the reason for his visit. Feels. A faint smile touched Arya's lips. Pam's pre-session commentary was a predictable, humanizing part of her routine. Very well, Pam. Send him in. She rose from her chair, smoothing the fabric of her skirt. Feels. She took her customary 3 steps toward the center of the room, a small ritual to anchor herself before a new client. You are a professional, Arya. The moment the door opens, your own life is placed on hold. Everything you carry is left outside. Feels. The door opened. She registered the shoes first. Burnished leather. Unmistakably Italian, exuding the kind of quiet expense that signifies true wealth. Then the perfectly creased linen trousers. Feels. A tailored jacket that likely cost more than her first month's rent. Her gaze traveled upward, and the axis of her world tilted to a halt. Green eyes, sharp and so devastatingly familiar that it felt impossible, met hers from across the room. Feels. He closed the door behind him, his attention fixed solely on her. The lock clicked shut. That ghost of a smile she knew so intimately played at the corner of his mouth. Knowing, subtle, and utterly ruinous. Feels. His skin was still bronzed from a year under a sun she could no longer imagine. And then his scent filled the space. Salt and cedar with a wild elemental note beneath it all. Feels. The scent of the sea. The scent of the earth. Bella. The name was a low, guttural sound from his throat, saturated with a year of absence. Arya's mouth fell open, but no words emerged. Her heart began to beat against her ribs. Feels. A frantic prisoner seeking escape. Sebastian Biano. The man who had haunted every waking moment and occupied every dream for 12 agonizing months. The man whose kiss was her nightly prayer. The man she loved, continued to love, and would always love, Feels, was standing in her office as if summoned by the sheer force of her own grief. He crossed half the room in 2 purposeful strides. Arya. Her own name, spoken by him, sounded like a confession. He shook his head slowly, his eyes consuming her. Feels. You look magnificent. With those words, the spell shattered. Her hand reacted on pure, primal instinct, long before her conscious mind could intervene. The crack of the slap was sharp and loud in the quiet room, snapping his head to the side. Feels. A fire ignited in her eyes. Nicholas Benedict, she spat. Sebastian was faster. One hand shot out, capturing her wrist. His other arm circled her waist, pulling her flush against his body. And then his mouth claimed hers. It was not a gentle kiss. Feels. It was not a question. It was an act of conquest. For a disorienting second, she was frozen. And then her body remembered him. A somatic memory, buried so deep, overran all logic. She knew it instantly. Feels. The year of separation had done nothing to extinguish the chemistry between them. Feels. If anything, the distance had only distilled it into something more potent, more volatile. When he finally broke the kiss, they were both gasping for air. His hands rose to frame her face, his thumbs stroking the contours of her cheekbones. Arya, my love, Feels, I have missed you beyond measure. He leaned in once more, and this time the kiss was tender, almost reverent. I could not come for you, he whispered against her lips, his voice raw with an emotion that bordered on broken. Feels. Not until every threat was eliminated. Not until I could be certain you were absolutely safe. Arya's hands found his chest, feeling the solid, living warmth of him through the expensive material. She pressed her face into his shirt, inhaling his scent. Feels. He smelled of home, and now Sebastian's arms tightened, holding her with a permanence that promised no release. Feels. Now I want my wife by my side, and I am never letting you out of my sight again. She craned her neck to meet his gaze, a tempest of anger, love, and relief churning within her. A whole year, Sebastian, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Feels. An entire year went by. How could you know I hadn't moved on, that I wouldn't have found somebody else? That arrogant, beautiful smile she first saw in the Scario garden spread across his face. Feels. The kind that made her want to strike him and kiss him in the same breath. His lips found the sensitive skin of her neck. Because you leave your apartment every morning at 8:30, he murmured, kissing the hollow of her throat. Feels. You take your lunch at your desk. It is almost always a salad or a sandwich, another kiss, placed just below her jaw. Your taste in wine remains atrocious. That bottle you purchased yesterday must have given you a terrible headache. Feels. His mouth traced the line of her jaw. 2 months ago, you were introduced to that doctor from the hospital. You had dinner. His eyes flicked up to meet hers, a glint of smug certainty in them. But I saw the expression on your face. Feels. You were completely uninterested. Arya pushed against his chest, creating a sliver of distance, though every part of her protested the separation. You've had me watch this entire time. Did you truly believe? Feels. Sebastian closed the gap without hesitation. That I would not protect you, even from the other side of the world. Feels. You couldn't send a single text? Her voice cracked, betraying the facade of her anger. Just to let me know you were alive. That was all I needed. His fingers threaded through her hair, a gentle, grounding pressure. Do you think that was easy for me? Feels. To look at photographs, to watch you on a monitor, to see you but not be able to touch you, to hear about your day from a subordinate instead of from you. He pressed his forehead to hers. But that is over. The Lamberts are finished. Diego is dead. Feels. There is no one left who poses a threat to you. For now, Arya whispered, blinking against a sudden burn. For now, we are together. His thumb traced her lower lip. I am here with you, to start our family. His gaze was absolute. Feels. And to run the clan from this city like Venti, she breathed. Feels. Just like Ora Venti, the full gravity of the parallel descends upon her. This was the life her mother lived, the life she so carefully concealed, the one Arya had now, through no choice of her own, inherited. What if this isn't what I want? Feels. The question escapes her lips, but her own body betrays the words, instinctively seeking his heat, aching for his touch in a gesture of premature surrender. A knowing smile plays on Sebastian's lips. Feels. A look that communicates he can see the war raging within her. Your body, Bella, is telling me an entirely different story. His fingertips ghost across her mouth. Then his palm rests over her heart, feeling its frantic rhythm against her ribs. Feels. Everything about you says you want me. Your pulse, your respiration, the way you surrender, even when you are fighting so hard to be angry. Arya's hands shoot up, yanking his mouth down to hers in a kiss filled with a year's worth of solitude, rage, Feels, and a desperate, all-consuming love. Feels. When they finally part, her voice returns. So what is the next move, Mr. Nicholas Benedict? His smile becomes something darker, laced with wicked intent. Now my love, my wife. He lets the moment hang in the air. First, a proper wedding. Feels. The one you are owed, not a frantic ceremony with a terrified official and men holding firearms. His hand slides to her abdomen, his palm spreading out with a sense of ownership. Then we acquire a home. The location is entirely your decision. Feels. A new fire burns in his gaze. And after that, we will raise our children. His voice lowers, thick with implication. But before all that, we should probably begin working on that final step without delay. Feels. Arya seizes his tie, pulling his face level with hers. No more false identities. Sebastian's smile is instantaneous. Done. We will live where I choose. He agrees with no sign of hesitation. Agreed. You will insulate our family from the business. Feels. Nothing that could ever place them in harm's way. His expression turned solemn. Without question, Arya's grip on the silk tightens, drawing him so near their breaths merge. And if you ever leave me again, her eyes lock with his. I promise you. Feels. I will be the one to kill you. Sebastian's arms encircle her, binding her tightly to him. I am never leaving your side again, Bella. Never. He lifts her clean off the floor. On instinct, her legs lock around his waist, their forms aligning perfectly. Feels. As if the last year had been nothing more than a fever dream. Feels. Sebastian, she attempts a tone of authority. The words emerge as a breathless whisper. This is my professional office. He crosses the room to the leather sofa near the window, that devastating smile fixed on his face. Heals. Aren't we meant to be processing your grief and loss, Dr. Venti? His eyes are alight with heat and undiluted mischief. We shouldn't squander another moment. The last rays of the Detroit sun filter through the glass. Heals, enveloping them in a golden haze as he lays her down. Outside, the city carries on. Horns blare, people hurry home. The world continues its rotation. But within the walls of that office, for the two of them, time itself had ceased to exist. Heals. Sebastian's mouth found hers once more, slower this time, deeper. It was a vow, a reclamation, a homecoming. Heals. Arya's fingers tangle in his hair, drawing him closer still. 12 months of separation. 12 months of phantom touches and memories that had begun to fray at the edges. 12 long months of a sustained, exhausting lie she told herself, that a life without man's possible. And in an instant, it all dissolved. She had left her heart behind in Scario. But Sebastian Biano had just crossed an ocean to return it to her.